Chapter 1468. I don't beat people up for no reason 3. Alright then. I'll give Miss some face. You two go back to your rooms and stay there. I won't train you today, and we'll continue tomorrow morning. Grape's words were like a decree of pardon, causing Philip and Philip's hearts to lighten. Woo. The feeling of being released was so good. After the two sisters returned to their rooms, they looked at the slightly empty room and felt extremely upset. Although their lives in the courtyard were not as good as their lives in the city lord's mansion, the place they were living in was 100 times better than the one they were living in now. Look at the place that the damn maidservant had let them live in now. This was clearly a storage room. How could it be for people to live in? The more they thought about it, the angrier they became. Sister, we can't go on like this. Otherwise, we'll die in their hands sooner or later. Fei Yi said fearfully. Then what can we do? Damn it, why are they here? Fei Li said with a depressed look. After she was sent to the courtyard by Liao Yang, although she was depressed for a few days, she later found out that other than the place where they lived was not as luxurious as the city lord's mansion, there was not much difference in other aspects. Thus, she settled down with peace of mind. After all, they did not have any status now and it was inappropriate for them to stay in the city lord's mansion for a long time. However, she did not expect that the two sisters had only spent a few days as young ladies here when Lung Ruoxue and the others came. Zui had even arranged for them to be Lung Ruoxue's maidservants. That damn Zui, he didn't even give face to Liao Yang. This made them hate Zui as well. Sister, why don't we send a letter to the young master and ask him to save us? I'm going to go crazy if this continues. Fei Yi said with a sad face. You think I don't want to? However, almost everyone here is from the left wing. And even the steward is not being polite to us anymore. How can we deliver the letter to Liao Yang? Philip said with a headache. Sister, as long as we pay enough, I don't believe that no one will be willing to help us with this. Fei Yi suggested. Alright then. I'll try to find someone, but they're so strict with us and torture us every day. How can I find them? When Fei Li thought of her current situation, she felt extremely depressed. She had come to the city lord's mansion to enjoy life, but now, she had fallen into Lung Ruoxue's hands. How could she not feel depressed? Sister, why don't you pretend to be sick? They can't possibly force you to continue training when you're sick. Fei Yi said after thinking for a while. Pretending to be sick? Would they believe it? Moreover, with our relationship, even if I'm really sick, I'm afraid they won't let me go. Philip said worriedly. Sister, you won't know if you don't try. Fei Yi encouraged. Alright then. I'll pretend to be sick tomorrow, and then take the opportunity to go out and find her. But you have to cooperate with me. I can't let anyone discover my whereabouts. Philip reminded her. Although this sister of his was not very successful, they were both on the same boat now. She did not believe that this sister of his would still be a burden to her. Sister, don't worry. I'll definitely think of a way to stall the three of them tomorrow. At that time, you just need to go out and find them. Fei Yi promised. This was a matter of her freedom. Even if it was not for her sister, she did not want to be tortured by Lung Ruoxue and the others. All right, he said. After the two sisters reached an agreement, they directly fell on the hard bed and fell asleep without realizing it. The next morning, Lung Ruoxue and the other two had just woken up when they saw Fei Yi running into their room with red eyes. When she saw them, she immediately cried out. Wah! He started to cry loudly. What are you crying for? We've seen you crying so early in the morning. Do you want us to be depressed for the whole day? When Grape saw Fei Yi's tear-stained face, not only did she not have any pity for her, but she also roared in annoyance. Sister! Sister is sick. Fei Yi sobbed, but her heart was pounding. These people were really too rough and unsympathetic. It was fine if they didn't comfort her when she was crying like this, but they treated her like a fiend, just like 2 days ago. This was really infuriating. While she was thinking about this, she couldn't think about why he was treating her like this. If it wasn't for the fact that the two sisters had done something that no one could tolerate, they wouldn't have been treated like this. He's sick? That means he's not dead yet. If you're not dead, why are you wailing? Don't tell me you can't wait for your sister to die? Grape said with a look of understanding. She knew that Fey did not like her sister, so she naturally spared no effort to add oil to the fire. She's my sister. Why would I want her to die? I just want to beg you to save her. She's really seriously ill. Fei said with red eyes. Grape. Since Philip is really sick, you should go and ask him for my help. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue finally spoke. Many thanks, miss. Fei quickly replied after hearing Lung Ruoxue's words. However, she kept calculating in her heart. When they went to her sister's room, they would know that her sister was really sick. Also, according to her sister, the poison she had poisoned herself could not be cured by anyone other than herself. Following that, Grape and Lotus Seed accompanied Fei to the room to visit Philip. When they returned, they reported to Lung Ruoxue with exaggerated details. Miss, you don't know how much money Philip spent to feign illness. Grape said with a speechless expression. She really did not expect that Philip would hurt her unscrupulously just to ask for help. That woman was cruel to others, but she was even more cruel to herself. It was really too terrifying. Since that's the case, don't let her down. It's not easy for them. Lung Ruoxue chuckled. Hee. Miss, I'm a kind and good person. In order to help her act more thoroughly, I also gave her some medicine to make sure that her acting will be more realistic. Grape said with a mysterious smile. Ark, did you drug her too? Hearing Grape's words, Lotus Seed could not help but exclaim. You're going offline too? Grape's eyes widened, and she looked at Lotus Seed in disbelief. She never thought that Lotus Seed, who had always been kind in her eyes, would actually do such a thing. Did this count as the young misguidance? What did you put in? Lotus Seed asked curiously. She and Grape had a lot of medicine on them, some for saving lives and some for killing. These medicines were all given to them by Miss for self-defense, so they carried them with them. Some were not even kept in their storage rings, which made it more convenient to use. I gave her some itching powder. Grape said proudly. I gave her stinky eggs. Lotus Seed said. At least you guys are of one mind. There's no next move. Lung Ruoxue's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. She wasn't surprised that Grapes would drug Philip because that girl had a fiery temper. After following her, she wasn't bound by the Een family's rules, so naturally, she was like a wild horse that had broken free from its reins. However, Lotus Seed, who had always been calm and steady, had actually drugged Philip. This made her sigh. The power of a role model was strong. Of course, she didn't think that Lotus Seed had drugged Philip because of her. So this Grape must be the scapegoat. Miss, how should we deal with Philip? Grape asked with a face full of schadenfreude. This time, that guy was probably going to go for wool and come home shorn. Don't worry about her. Just focus on training Fey today. Lung Ruoxue replied calmly. Yes, Grape and Lotus replied. After that, they turned around and left Lung Ruoxue's room excitedly. Fei stood in the courtyard, her eyes fixed on Lung Ruoxue and the other two. She was afraid that they would go and see her sister again on a whim. She was afraid that her sister was no longer in the room, and she must not let them find out about this. Poor Fei was still daydreaming, but in reality, the plan that the two sisters had agreed upon was already known by Lung Ruoxue. The reason why Lung Ruoxue was willing to cooperate was because she wanted to kill two birds with one stone. As for the two birds, they were not within the scope of her concern. On the other side, after Philip sneaked out of Lung Ruoxue's courtyard, he found a guard who seemed to be easy to talk to. He begged him to pass a message to the young master, saying that he was waiting for him to save her. When the guard heard Philip's words, he was shocked at first. Then he saw the injuries on Philip's face and immediately felt sympathetic towards him. He promised that he would help her pass on the message. Upon seeing this, Philip immediately thanked the guard profusely. He even took out a piece of high-grade crystal as a thank you gift. The guard was initially unwilling to accept it, but Philip forced the crystal into the guard's hands. After that, he told the guard where he was staying and quickly ran back to his simple room. He did not want Lung Ruoxue and the others to become suspicious. If that happened, she would have wasted her time. The guard watched Philip's back as he left, a meaningful smile on his lips. Then he teleported and left the courtyard. Philip returned to his room and immediately lay on the bed. She had already taken the antidote for the poison she had given her, but for some reason, her body still felt as if there were tens of thousands of ants gnawing on it all day long, causing her to itch. She couldn't take it anymore, so she scratched herself with her hands. Wherever her hands could touch, she would leave a trail of blood. If she couldn't touch it, she couldn't help but rub it on the bed to relieve the itchiness and pain on her body. When Fei Yi walked into their room like a dead dog, she saw Philip rubbing against the bed. His clothes were untidy as if he had been, but she knew that was impossible. "Sister, what are you doing?" Philip's strange behavior even made her ignore the stench that she had smelled when she entered the room. "Fei Yi, why are you only back now? My back is so itchy, help me scratch it." Philip quickly ordered when he saw that Fei had returned. "Sister, look at what you look like now. If the young master comes and sees you like this, how can he save us?" Seeing that Philip did not realize that his actions were inappropriate, she could not help but admonish him. After all, this was related to her fate, so she would not allow Philip to make any mistakes. "He won't be able to come so quickly. Hurry up and help me scratch. Don't waste any more time. Otherwise, I won't be able to leave this place, and I won't let you leave either." Philip could not help but warn. Chapter 1469. The Crazy Philip. 1. Fei was extremely displeased by her sister's threat, but she knew her selfish sister well enough to know that she would definitely do something like that. So, she reached out and scratched her unwillingly. With Fei's help, the itchiness and pain on Philip's body eased a lot. However, the stench on her body became stronger and stronger, so strong that Fei was about to vomit. "Sister, why is your body so smelly?" Fei covered her nose and asked unhappily. "Stinky? What nonsense are you spouting? Why is there a stench coming from my body?" Philip immediately shouted in dissatisfaction after hearing what Fei said. "Sister, it's really coming from you. Can't you smell it?" Fei said in disbelief. How could Philip not smell such a strong scent? It was too strange. "No, I didn't. Fei, you're wrong. How could I have a smell?" Fei said unhappily with a straight face. In fact, she really couldn't smell the smell from her body. This was the advantage of Lung Ruoxia's elixir. The person involved couldn't smell her elixir, but others couldn't stand it. Not only that, if someone stayed by her side for a long time, they would also smell. Even if she took 100 baths, she wouldn't be able to get rid of this smell. Although this smell wouldn't stay with her for the rest of her life, she still had to take a bath. However, it was impossible to remove it in a short period of time. Is there really a mistake? Seeing that her sister was so certain, Fei was a little uncertain. "You must have made a mistake. I shower every day. You know that," Philip said with dissatisfaction. "Then where did this stench come from?" Fei asked with a puzzled look. "Could it be that you brought it in from the outside? How come I can't smell anything?" Philip's face was also filled with confusion. Hearing Philip's words, Fei sniffed her own body and was shocked to find that she was also stinky. She was shocked. This can't do. She couldn't bring the stench to the young master. Thinking of this, she said to Philip, "It really seems like it's from outside. Sister, I'm going to take a shower." After she finished speaking, she ran out of the room in a hurry. Her current identity was that of a maidservant, so she could only take a bath in the maidservant's bathroom. When she entered, there was no one there, so she sneaked in like a thief and quickly took a bath before returning to the room. As soon as she entered the room, before she could even sit down properly, Grape sent someone to pass on a message, saying that she should take good care of Philip for the next few days. When Philip recovered, they would train the two sisters together. When she heard this for a moment, she actually hoped that her sister's illness would never recover. At the same time, the guard who had passed on the message for Philip returned to the city lord's mansion without a sound. He did not go to Liaoyang directly, but went to see Zui's residence. Zui, who was sitting in the study, heard the guard's report and a faint smile appeared on his handsome face. It had only been 2 days, and a good show was about to start? Oh. He really did not know how Lung Ruoxia would treat the 2 women who had betrayed her. He was really looking forward to it. "Master, This message must be passed on to the young master, understand? The guard asked respectfully. Zhuyi was his real master, but they all called him Lord Zhua on the surface. They were the guards of the city lord's mansion now. Of course. Otherwise, wouldn't we be letting down that woman's good intentions? By the way, the wound on that woman's face hasn't healed yet, has it? Zhuyi could not help but ask. Not good. It seems to be even more swollen. I was almost scared today. The guard said honestly with a look of disdain. Ha ha. That little maidservant was really fierce. But I like it. Zhuyi laughed heartily. After hearing Zhuyi's words, the guard's face darkened. He thought to himself, master's preferences are so different. Other people like docile little sheep, but he liked tigresses. However, to have a shrewish maidservant, this master was probably a real tigress. Go and tell this message to Liao Yang. By the way, tell me about the plight of those two women. Remember to make it sound miserable, or else he won't go. Zhuyi reminded with a faint smile. Yes. Master, the wound on Philip's face. The guard only managed to finish his sentence, but he knew that his master would understand. Of course I can't tell you. You have to pick a good one to say. Zhuyi reminded. This subordinate understands. With that, the guard turned around and left. Zhuyi sat in his chair, thinking about what was about to happen. He couldn't help but laugh. He could imagine how shocked Liao Yang would be when he saw that pig-like face. It seemed that he was really too free recently, even wanting to get involved in this kind of thing. However, after the guard informed Liao Yang of the situation, he didn't have much of a reaction. On Lung Ruoxia's side, things gradually calmed down, but Phelis' injuries had yet to recover. In Lung Ruoxia's room, the grapes kept walking back and forth, making Lung Ruoxia feel dizzy. Grape, can you stop walking around? I'm going to get dizzy from all the spinning. Lung Ruoxia reminded her in amusement. What trouble had this lass encountered again? Was it because he didn't let her torture the sisters these 2 days? Miss, it's been 3 days. Why hasn't there been any movement from the city lord's mansion? Grape pouted her lips in dissatisfaction. The city lord's mansion was too inefficient. And that Liao Yang, didn't he know how to take care of women? Why didn't they come to see the Philip sisters? In fact, the sisters' little plan had always been in their hands. They also knew that Philip had asked someone to send a message to Liao Yang in the city lord's mansion. However, after waiting excitedly for 3 days, there was no movement from the city lord's mansion, which made her a little annoyed. What's the hurry? Zhuyi is watching over there. If Liao Yang comes, Zhuyi will come and tell us. Lung Ruoxia smiled calmly. Previously, Zhuyi had sent someone to inform her. Philip had sent a message to the city lord's mansion, so he would naturally inform her of any movements there. Since someone was willing to be her spy, why not? Chapter 1470. The Crazy Philip 2 Grape. Have you prepared the things I asked you to? Lung Ruoxia thought for a moment before asking. Don't worry, miss. We're all ready. We're just waiting for the fish to take the bait. Grape promised with an evil smile. Yes. Lung Ruoxia nodded and did not say anything else. That night, the weather in Plentiful City changed, and it started to rain heavily. Lung Ruoxia stood in front of the window and stared at the bean-sized raindrops outside. She was in an extremely good mood. Today's weather was really good. Oh, to be precise, today was a good day to do shameful things. She couldn't help but think of the past. Every time she and the demon wanted to do something bad, they would choose a dark and windy time with bad weather. Miss, the wind is strong in front of the window, don't catch a cold. Grape saw Lung Ruoxia standing in front of the window and taking in the cold wind. He couldn't help but remind her. Although they were all cultivators, before they cultivated to a certain realm, they could also fall sick. If cultivators fell sick, it wasn't something that could be cured by taking some small medicine. It doesn't matter. Grape, if I'm not wrong, there should be some movement today. Lung Ruoxia chuckled. No way. It's raining so heavily outside. Why would Liao Yang come? Grape said in disbelief. Why wouldn't I? He's been grounded. If he didn't take advantage of this weather, how could he have come out? Lung Ruoxia understood. Liao Yang hadn't shown any reaction these few days, not because he didn't want to come, but because he didn't have the chance. Now it was a good chance. That's true. Grape thought for a while and said, "Ha ha. Miss Lung is really smart." As soon as the two of them finished speaking, a figure suddenly appeared in front of the window. "Are you trying to scare me to death? How can you come uninvited? You don't even know how to knock." Seeing that the person who appeared was Zhua Yi, Grape could not help but shout, "It's raining so heavily outside. If I knock on the door, not only will you not hear me, but I'll also have to trouble you to open the door for me. Besides, why are you so timid? Look at how calm your young miss is. You have to learn." Zhua Yi said with a smile. The implication of his words was that he did not knock on the door because he was thinking for them. Grape was so angry that he couldn't speak. His pair of beautiful eyes could only glare fiercely at the annoying man in front of him. "Honored guest, did you come here just to anger my maidservant?" Hearing Zhua Yi's words, Lung Ruoxue laughed lightly and teased, "Of course not. I'm here to watch a good show. Liao Yang has already set off from the city lord's mansion." Zhua Yi laughed evilly. "You're already here. Why isn't he here yet?" Lung Ruoxue asked in confusion. She had asked Qingju to keep an eye on Philip. "He's the young master. Although he sneaked out, he still has to put on airs. Unlike me, I'm all alone, so I can go wherever I want," Zhua Yi said with a self-deprecating tone. "Moreover, my cultivation is above his. It's normal for me to be faster than him." Zhua Yi added, "So, he'll have to wait a while before he arrives?" Lung Ruoxue said, If there's anything you want to do, you can tell me and I'll find someone to help you," Zhua Yi said with a smile. "Have you always been a traitor?" Lung Ruoxue was a little speechless. This person was still a guest elder of the city lord's residence. He actually wanted to help her deal with Liao Yang. Although there was someone who came to her door, it would be a waste not to use him. However, she had to ask clearly to avoid causing trouble for herself. How can this be considered a traitor? I'm helping the city lord's son, and watching a good show at the same time. Besides, I'm not a servant of the city lord's mansion. It's the city lord who invited me here, not his son, so don't you accuse me," Zhua Yi said with a wronged expression. "All right then." Lung Ruoxue nodded. She had accepted Zhua Yi's explanation. Then she told part of the plan to the left wing. Originally, she wanted to let Grape and Lotus Seed do this, but for such matters, the more manpower the better. With the participation of the left wing, the plan would be more smooth. However, after Zhua Yi heard Lung Ruoxue's instructions, black lines appeared on his forehead. He didn't dare to say how high the cultivation of his confidants was, but wasn't it overkill to ask them to do such a thing? "What's wrong? Are you looking down on such a small matter?" Lung Ruoxue looked at Zhua Yi's expression and knew what he was thinking. "No. I just feel that this is a bit of a waste of talent for them." Zhua Yi spoke the truth. His trusted subordinates had followed him for many years, and had fought their way through all sorts of battles. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. Besides, you're the one who said you wanted to help. Otherwise, I would have asked Grape and Lotus Seed to do it," Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. "All right then." Zhua Yi understood the underlying meaning of Lung Ruoxue's words. "If I can be my maidservant, why can't you be your confidant? Guest master, although you agreed reluctantly, believe me, when you see it with your own eyes, you will definitely be satisfied." Lung Ruoxue reminded him with an evil smile. "I'll wait and see," Zhua Yi said expectantly. After communicating with Lung Ruoxue, Zhua Yi sent a message to his confidants and explained the situation to them. Then the few of them waited patiently. As midnight approached, a sneaky figure sneaked into Lung Ruoxue's courtyard. Needless to say, this person was Liao Yang, who had been waiting for Lung Ruoxue and the others for a long time. The reason why he had sneaked in was because he didn't want his father to find out, and he also didn't want Lung Ruoxue to see him. After all, he wasn't here to see that hateful woman. The moment he thought of that woman who didn't know what was good for her, his heart would be filled with anger. However, at the same time, he couldn't let her go. He was quite familiar with the courtyard, so it didn't take much effort for him to sneak into Lung Ruoxue's residence. He also found the room that Philip mentioned easily. He gently knocked on the door twice, and Fei Yi, who had been sleeping soundly, was woken up. For the past few days she had been thinking about when the young master would come, so she had not been able to sleep well. Even a small sound would wake her up. "Who is it?" Philip asked in a low voice. She did not dare to make a loud noise in the middle of the night, for fear of alarming others. Chapter 1471. The Crazy Philip 3. "It's me," Liao Yang said in a low voice. "Young master." Fei Yi was overjoyed. The young master had really come. This was great. Surprised, Fei quickly got down and opened the door, not even bothering to put on her coat. When he saw Fei Yi, who came to open the door, wearing only a translucent white inner garment, and her towering chest was faintly visible, Liao Yang suddenly felt a hot stream rushing to his head. These days, he had been grounded in the courtyard by his father, the mayor. Even the beautiful maidservant beside him had been replaced by his father's attendant, which made him, who had always been a lecherous man, not eat meat for a few days. Therefore, it was easy to imagine how big the impact of Fei Yi's seduction on him was. In fact, the main reason why Liao Hui changed all the women around him to men was that he hoped that his son could cultivate his character and not cause any unsalvageable trouble before marriage. Unfortunately, Liao Yang did not understand his father's thoughts. Instead, he had long been complaining in his heart. He felt that his father was still controlling him a little too much even though he was already so old. "Yeah, I miss you so much." Seeing Fei Yi, Liao Yang held her tightly in his arms and moved his hands up and down. "Young master, don't be like this, I'm here." Fei Yi pretended to be shy and avoided Liao Yang's touch. Although she wanted Liao Yang to treat her like this, she still had to pretend to be a lady when it was time. Otherwise, she would be looked down upon by Liao Yang. Although she said no, her body was already hanging on Liao Yang. "It doesn't matter. I'm here to see you too, sisters. I've missed you too so much." After saying that, Liao Yang closed the door and carried Fei to the small bed where she was sleeping. They lay down together. At the same time, Lung Ruoxue and the others who were hiding in a dark corner were in no mood to enjoy the live erotic scenes in the room. Lung Ruoxue smiled at Zhuo Yi and said, "Do we do it now? Philip doesn't seem to have woken up yet. Go and wake her up." "I'm not going. However, I can send a beastie," Zhuo Yi said with a look of disdain. After he finished speaking, a fist-sized bee appeared in his hand. The bee's entire body was dark gold, and its 2 pairs of wings were as transparent as crystal. It looked exceptionally beautiful. Lung Ruoxue had not expected Zhuo Yi to have a bee as a beast. Out of curiosity, she couldn't help but exclaim in admiration at his unique preference. It seemed that this guy had a heavy taste. "Dark. Go and wake Philip up. Her sister is enjoying herself. How can she not join in?" Zhuo Yi said indignantly. After listening to Zhuo Yi's words, Lung Ruoxue and the other two's foreheads were filled with black lines. They thought to themselves, what is this fellow trying to do? They did not want to wake Philip up, so that she could participate in this. Zhuo Yi's words further confirmed Lung Ruoxue's guess that this man had a strong taste. "Master, when do we make our move?" A guard suddenly ran over and asked in a low voice. "It's not the time yet. I'll give you the signal later," Zhuo Yi said. "Yes." The guard nodded in response and left silently. "Don't tell me you still want to enjoy the live spring?" Lung Ruoxue chuckled as she teased. However, the word master from the guard's mouth had caught her attention. It seemed like Zhuo Yi was a rather mysterious person. She just didn't know what his background was. At this moment, a scream came from the Philly sisters' room, followed by a man's exclamation, and then a series of banging sounds came out. "Who are you? Where did you come from?" Liao Yang's voice came from the room. When Lung Ruoxue and the others heard it, they all knew that Liao Yang had seen Philip. However, Philip's current appearance did not make Liao Yang feel any pity for her. Instead, it made him even more annoyed with her. It was Philip's fault for ruining his good time. At this critical moment, any man would be angry. "I'm your Philip. I was the one who sent someone to inform you to come and save me." In the room, Philip said with a pained expression, his voice even a little choked. She's really your sister?" Liao Yang said in disbelief. Although Philip was not the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, he still could not accept the fact that this person was calling herself Philip. Moreover, he and Fei Yi were on the same level, which made him even more annoyed with this pig-faced woman. How could she be my sister? Young master, don't listen to her nonsense. It's not like you haven't seen my sister before. Hearing Liao Yang's question, Fei Yi quickly replied. She knew that she could not admit that this woman, who had long lost her human appearance, was her sister. Otherwise, not only would Liao Yang not save her from her misery, but he would also leave in a fit of anger, which was not what she wanted. For the past 3 days, she had tried her best to cover up the smell in the room and on her body. She was afraid that Liao Yang would dislike her when he came. Originally, everything was going smoothly. However, she did not expect that her sister, who had suddenly barged in, would ruin her good plan. At this moment, she really wanted to strangle her sister who failed in her task and was good at spoiling things. It was bad enough that she was unlucky, but why did she have to involve her? Fei Yi, you shameless little bitch, how dare you not acknowledge me? Hearing Fei Yi's words, fury rose in Philip's heart. At this time, she only thought that Philip didn't admit that she was only enjoying Liao Yang's love and wealth alone, but she had long forgotten how terrifying her current appearance was. After cursing, she felt that it was not enough, so she rushed up to Fei Yi, wanting to hit her. However, Liao Yang, who was with Fei Yi, would not give her the chance. He released a gust of wind-type divine power and sent Fei Li flying. Liao Yang's strength was not weak. After being hit, Fei Li fell directly to the wall, and blood flowed down from the corner of her mouth. However, after struggling to stand up, her venomous snake-like eyes stared at Fei Yi, who was trembling in Liao Yang's arms. If hatred could kill, Fei Yi would have died 1,000 times over. Young master, save me. Fei Yi felt Fei Li's gaze and was so scared that she hid in Liao Yang's arms. At this time, Fei Yi's helpless and fragile appearance aroused Liao Yang's desire to protect her. Chapter 1472, The Crazy Philip 4, Don't be afraid. I'm here. This ugly woman won't dare to do anything to you. Liao Yang quickly comforted him. I won't let you off. Fei Li listened to their conversation, and she hated Liao Yang as well. After calming down, she took out a long knife from her storage ring. This knife was her family heirloom, and she rarely used it. Fei Yi's face turned even paler when she saw the knife. She was no stranger to this knife because when she was young, this sister of hers had used this knife to scare her a lot. And that knife was indeed a treasure knife that could cut through iron as if it were mud. Just looking at the terrifying cold air emitted from the knife was enough to make one's legs go weak. Now that her sister had shown this knife, was she planning to kill her? Fei Yi thought to herself, a little scared. However, with Liao Yang by her side, she was more or less at ease. I advise you not to act recklessly. I'm the young master of Plentiful City. It won't do you any good to provoke me. Looking at the knife, Liao Yang couldn't help but remind the other party of his identity. It was a really good knife. Wasn't it a bit of a waste to leave it in the hands of this ugly woman? So what if you're the young master? Since you've been unkind to me, don't blame me for being unkind to you. Fei Li said angrily. If she had been worried about Liao Yang's identity before, then after Fei Yi refused to acknowledge her and Liao Yang hit her, she had nothing to worry about anymore. She knew very well that even if she did not fight to the death, Liao Yang would not let her go. Since they had already fallen out, she had to find someone to die with. At this moment, Philip was thinking, if I die, you guys won't have an easy time either. After making up his mind, Philip injected his divine power into the long saber. Immediately the long saber, which was emitting white light, flickered with red light. Then, the saber ray flew toward Fei Yi and Liao Yang. Seeing this, Liao Yang did not care about the weak beauty in his arms anymore. He quickly jumped off the bed and found a safe place to rest. Fei Yi, who was not as strong as Philip, was not so lucky. Although she wanted to dodge, Philip's sword light was mainly aimed at the two of them. He would not give her the chance. Even though Fei had jumped off the bed, the red light from the blade still managed to cut her skin. The other blades did not want to leave empty-handed either. After their first attack failed, They started to search for their next target. Liao Yang didn't expect that the blade light would attack again. Fei Li, who was not far away, kept releasing the blade light in his hand. For a moment, Fei Yi, who was covered in blood, and Liao Yang, who was in an extremely sorry state, could only run around like headless flies. However, more and more blade lights refused to let them go. No matter where they hid, they would follow them like a shadow. The room they were in was not big to begin with, so it did not take long for both of them to be covered in wounds, and Fei Yi's injuries were even more serious. "Sister, I was wrong. Please spare me." Fei Yi, who was covered in blood, begged for mercy. However, Philip, who had already made up his mind to kill her, would not let her go. "You crazy woman. Stop." Liao Yang, who was entangled by the blade light, also shouted, "Impossible. You can't stop after using this blade technique. You can all go to hell with me. Ha ha." Philip laughed arrogantly. His swollen face became even more distorted, and Liao Yang almost vomited. "Men. Someone come and protect me." Seeing that the ugly woman in front of him had really gone crazy, Liao Yang was a little scared. He didn't care that his sneaky escape from the city lord's mansion had been exposed, so he shouted for help. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue, who was hiding in the dark and watching the show, raised her eyebrows slightly. She looked at Zhua Yi and asked, "As a guest elder of the city lord's mansion, why aren't you going to save him? What's the hurry? He's not dead yet, right? Just leave a breath before you go in." Zhua Yi said disapprovingly, "Do you have some sort of deep enmity with this young master?" Lung Ruoxue asked curiously. "No, I didn't. I was invited by his father. Although he's very dissatisfied with me, he doesn't dare to offend me too much. I also don't buy it, as long as it's acceptable on the surface, so we really don't have too many disputes." Zhua Yi explained. "Then what are you doing?" Lung Ruoxue deliberately only said half a sentence. Her beautiful eyes were fixed on Zhua Yi, waiting for his answer. Chapter 1473. People from the Alchemist Guild headquarters. 1. He sneaked out to court death. What does it have to do with me? I don't have the obligation to save him. Besides, he asked for it. I have to teach him a lesson. But the most important thing is that this woman is too scary. I can't afford to offend her. If her blade light hits me and am injured, wouldn't that be an undeserved disaster? When Zhua Yi said this, he looked at Lung Ruoxue with a bitter expression, as if he was saying, "How could you be so cruel? Women are tigers." Zhua Yi sighed when he saw that Lung Ruoxue was ignoring him. "It's the man who turned the woman into a tiger." Lung Ruoxue said with a smile, "Miss Lung, tigers are born. How can you blame a man?" Zhua Yi whispered disapprovingly, because he would definitely have a part in the man Lung Ruoxue was talking about. He could not be the scapegoat. Then who is to blame? Lung Ruoxue asked with a half-smile after hearing Zhua Yi's words. At this moment, a few more shrill cries were heard from the room. "Art! Help me! Someone come quickly! Protect me!" The voices came from Fei Yi and Liao Yang. Lung Ruoxue and Zhua Yi looked at each other and smiled. However, neither of them had the intention to go in and save him. "Someone's calling for help." The two of them repeated in unison. "Do you want him to die?" Zhua Yi asked with an evil smile. "Do you want him to die?" Lung Ruoxue asked in confusion after hearing Zhua Yi's words. "I don't care. He's not anyone to me." Zhua Yi shrugged his shoulders and said, "I don't want him to die now." Lung Ruoxue said with a faint smile. She had underestimated how crazy Philip was. Her plan had basically died before it could even be carried out. This made her a little unwilling. However, there was a benefit to this. At least, the city lord would not pin the blame on them. Then let them cut him a little longer. I'll order people to save him. Zhua Yi said with a smile. "I think we can go back and sleep." Lung Ruoxue said after some thought. "That's reasonable." Zhua Yi agreed with this idea, but action was better than action. After making the decision, Zhua Yi explained it to his confidants and they went back. The next morning, before Lung Ruoxue had even given her instructions, Grape had gone to gather information with a face full of curiosity. When she returned, She did not wait for Lung Ruoxue to ask and told Lung Ruoxue and Lotus about what she had gathered with a smile. It turned out that after they left yesterday, Zui's men did not immediately go in to save the young master. When they went in, Liao Yang was almost dying. As for the sisters, they had already stopped breathing. No one could save them. Although Grape felt relieved that they were killing each other, she also felt a little regretful because the plan they had arranged did not work. They had made her excited for a few days, which was really depressing. However, after Lung Ruoxue heard her words, she told her with certainty that the matter was not over yet. Liao Yang was wounded to the point of death, and the main culprit had died. So, who would the depressed city lord vent his anger on? Without a doubt, the people living in the courtyard would definitely become the scapegoats, and they would probably be the first to bear the brunt. However, if there were any signs of trouble, the left wing would most likely inform them. Hopefully, the city lord was a smart person and would not do anything stupid. Otherwise, she could not guarantee what she would do. At this moment, the city lord's residence was just as Lung Ruoxue had expected. It was shrouded in dark clouds. In Liao Yang's room, Liao Hui kept walking around with a dark face. The others in the room saw this and didn't dare to make any sound. The atmosphere was extremely tense. At this time, Liao Yang's room door was pushed open again. Zui strode in and looked at Liao Yang lying on the bed. He frowned and said, "City Lord, what's wrong with the young master? How did you get so badly injured?" His face was filled with confusion. Luckily, Lung Ruoxue wasn't here. Otherwise, she would definitely say that he was acting. Continue acting. Left wing, where have you been? After Liao Hui saw Zui, his face darkened and he asked unhappily. Something happened to his precious son. He wanted to find Zui to discuss the countermeasures, but he could not find him. This made him even more angry. I went to the neighboring city to do what the city lord told me. Didn't I mention it to you before? Zui said with a wronged expression. Oh, after Zui's reminder, Liao Hui remembered that Zui had told him that he was going to the neighboring city. However, because of Yang, his mind was in a mess and he could not remember anything at all. He only wanted to find his favorite guest elder to discuss countermeasures, but he could not find him. This made him more and more anxious. City Lord, who injured the young master? Seeing that Liao Hui did not answer his question, Zui continued to ask. He knew Liao Yang too well. If he didn't ask clearly, Liao Yang would definitely doubt his loyalty. Of course, he had to put on a show. In fact, ever since he found out that the sisters had sent someone to pass a message to Liao Yang, he had been preparing to find an excuse to leave the city lord's mansion. At this time, Liao Hui had something to ask him to do. With an excuse, he naturally would not stay any longer. In just one day, he had completed the task that Liao Hui had asked him to do. Then, he returned to Plentiful City without anyone knowing. All of this, except for a few of his confidants, no one else knew. He also cleared his name to avoid Liao Hu's anger. By 2 bitches, but they're already dead. Liao Hui gritted his teeth and said. Hatred flashed in his eyes. How did you get hurt by 2 bitches? Wasn't the young lord grounded in his room by the city lord? Zui asked with a puzzled expression. The expression on his face was as pure as it could get. It's really embarrassing to say. Liao Hui sighed and then said, Yang sneaked out of the city lord's mansion last night to see the bitch who was locked up in the courtyard. I really regret that I was soft-hearted at that time, and didn't deal with those women. Otherwise, how could Yang be in trouble? City lord. The women in the side courtyard have all followed young master for many years. They shouldn't have the guts to hurt young master like this, right? Zui frowned and pretended to be confused. In fact, he was laughing inside because Liao Yang was too funny now. His whole body was wrapped in gauze and only his eyes could be seen. He did not understand how serious his injury was. Chapter 1474. People from the Alchemist Guild headquarters too. If they didn't have the guts, why would Yang be lying in bed unconscious? Liao Hui said with some hatred. He had told Yang long ago that women were a source of trouble and asked Yang to restrain himself, but his son didn't listen. Now something had happened. City lord, Which woman was the one who hurt him? Zui asked again. It's a pair of sisters called Fei something. I heard that he didn't follow Yang for long. Liao Hui sighed and said. He had already ordered his subordinates to throw these two sisters into the river to feed the fish. However, he still did not feel any hatred. Oh, City Lord, since the two sisters are already dead, doesn't that mean that the young master can't avenge them? Zui pretended to ask. In fact, he asked this because he wanted to know what Liao Hui was going to do next. I've already sent people to investigate their family's address. I believe we'll be able to find it very soon. Even if they're dead, I won't let their family off. Their families must pay the price for their daughter hurting Yang. Liao Hui said fiercely. We must take revenge for the young master. Zui said, hoping for the world to be in chaos. After all, the person the city lord wanted to kill had nothing to do with him, so he was happy to watch a good show. Zui Yang is injured to this extent. I don't intend to let the women in the courtyard off. Liao Hui said. City Lord, the young master's injury has nothing to do with the other women, but if we kill those women as well, it will affect the young master and the city lord's reputation if word gets out. Zui reminded him with a worried look. I can't care anymore. Those women actually left Yang in the lurch. How could I tolerate them? Liao Hui said with some hatred. Leave him to die? City Lord, why do you say that? Zui appropriately showed his confusion and asked. Yang was so seriously injured. He must have asked for help before he fainted. However, no one went to save him. Don't you think they deserve to die? Liao Hui gritted his teeth and said. City Lord, I can understand that you want to kill them to avenge the young master, but killing them is really not a wise move. Although those women's families are not very powerful, and they may not have a high status in the family, but the purpose of their existence is also proof that the family behind them has a good relationship with plentiful city. If the city lord kills them in a rage, what will those families think? Would the young master be sad when he woke up? Besides, it rained heavily last night, so it's understandable that they didn't hear any cries for help. If it wasn't for the heavy rain, I could have rushed back to the city lord's mansion last night. Zui advised him earnestly. As for whether Liao Hui would listen to him, it was none of his business. I understand what you're saying, but am not willing to accept this. Liao Hui kept sighing. The reason why he didn't kill those women last time was not only because he was afraid that his son would be sad, but also because of their families. After all, most of the women had families. City Lord, the most important thing right now is to treat the young master's injuries. We can discuss the rest later. Zui reminded. I know. I've already sent someone to the Alchemist Guild headquarters to invite an alchemist. Liao Hui said. Why did you go to the Alchemist Guild headquarters to invite people? Doesn't our plentiful city also have an Alchemist Guild? Zui asked in confusion. They can't cure Yang injuries. Liao Hui said dejectedly. Is the young master's injury very serious? Zui couldn't help but ask. Yesterday, after he left the courtyard, he had gone to find a place to sleep. When he returned to the city lord's mansion, the housekeeper had immediately told him that something had happened to Liao Yang. Therefore, he didn't have time to ask his confidant about the details of the situation, and went straight to Liao Yang's residence. And Liao Hui nodded but did not elaborate. City Lord, the heavens will help the young master. He'll be fine, don't worry. Zui consoled him with a concerned look. I hope so. Liao Hui said with a face full of worry. In fact, he knew his own suffering. After Zui consoled him, he stayed in Liao Yang's room for a long time before he found an excuse to go back to his room. As soon as he returned to his room, he summoned his confidant and wanted to ask about the situation last night. In the room on the left wing, the guard seemed to have difficulty speaking. Just say what you have to say. Don't act like a woman and be so coy. Zui really wanted to kick his confidant a few times when he saw him like this. Master, Liao Yang is dying. The guard said in a low voice. What do you mean? Isn't he still alive? Zui was confused. He's alive, but he can't do it in that area. The guard said, blushing. In that aspect. Zui didn't understand, and his face was full of question marks. That's the part that men care about the most, and he's impotent. The guard saw that his master still didn't understand, and could only explain. It's true. Ha ha ha. It's retribution. After Zhuai heard the guard's words, he couldn't help but laugh wildly. That woman, Philip, was really capable. She had actually made a lecherous man impotent. This was a big blow to Liao Yang. This was definitely more unbearable than killing him. No wonder Liao Hui went to the Alchemist Guild headquarters to invite people. However, can this kind of illness be cured? Zhuai mumbled to himself with a curious expression. In the immortal realm, he didn't seem to have heard of any medicinal pill that could cure impotence, right? Your subordinate does not know. The guard's face turned red and he didn't know what to say. Obviously, his master's question made him very embarrassed. Oh, you can leave now and keep a close eye on Liao Yang's movements. If there's anything, come and tell me immediately. Zhuai was speechless as he looked at his confidant's shy expression. He didn't ask anything he shouldn't have, did he? Why would a man be shy? He couldn't help but curse in his heart. Hearing Zhuai's words, the guard heaved a sigh of relief and immediately ran out of his room. Zhuai was depressed as he watched his confidant run away faster than a rabbit. Was he that scary? However, even though he was depressed, he still had to share the good news with his partner. Therefore, when he found out that Liao Yang was impotent, he immediately sent into Lung Ruoxia's residence to tell her the news. Chapter 1475. Someone from the Alchemist Guild headquarters arrives. 3. In the courtyard. In Lung Ruoxia's room. She looked at the uninvited little thing in front of her, and a few drops of cold sweat dripped down her forehead. Just come if you want to. What was he trying so hard to act cute for? That fist-sized dark golden bee was currently staring at Lung Ruoxia with its large, watery eyes. It did not even blink as it stared at her. Furthermore, its face seemed to reveal a trace of shyness. However, when it saw that Lung Ruoxia did not take the initiative to respond to it, its gaze turned into a hidden bitterness. Little dark, right? How could you abandon your master? Lung Ruoxia couldn't stand this bee's resentful gaze anymore. If it continued to stare at her like this, she would definitely think that she had done something to let it down. In fact, this was only their second meeting. I didn't abandon my master. My master ordered me to deliver this letter to you. It was not hard to hear a hint of resentment in its tone. However, what Lung Ruoxia did not know was that it was precisely because she did not greet little and warmly that the extremely fragile little bee was sad. Oh, any good news? Lung Ruoxia asked curiously. Master said. Liao Yang is impotent and said that Liao Hui wanted to take revenge for his son by killing the woman living in the courtyard. However, he was persuaded by him for the time being. Dark answered honestly. You're infertile? Lung Ruoxia was taken aback. She never thought that Philip would do something like this. This woman was too ruthless. It seemed like she had to learn from her. Master told you to be careful because Liao Hu's mental state is not normal. He might change his mind at any time and send people to kill you. Dark warned. Master also said that Liao Hui went to the Alchemist Guild headquarters to invite people. I don't know if they can cure Liao Yang. Said Dark. Alchemist Guild headquarters? When the alchemists from the Alchemist Guild headquarters arrive, they'll have to trouble you to inform me again, little Dark. Lung Ruoxia requested with a smile. Then, she took out a red fruit filled with dense spiritual qi from her bracelet and handed it to Dark. Thank you. Little Dark took the fruit joyfully and took a bite. It immediately felt a warm stream of energy flowing into its body. The warm feeling was so comfortable that it almost cried out. The fruit was so delicious. It couldn't help but sigh in its heart. Seeing that Dark was eating happily, Lung Ruoxia took out a few more fruits and told it to keep them well, and not let its master find out. Otherwise, it would not be able to eat them. When An heard Lung Ruoxia's words, he was so frightened that he hurriedly kept the fruits into his spatial pocket. Lung Ruoxia, on the other hand, almost laughed out loud when she saw how cute the little bee was. This little fellow was quite cute too. After delivering the message and receiving Lung Ruoxia's gift, it flapped its little wings and flew away happily. After Dark left Grape, who had not said a word, could not help but ask, "Miss, I didn't expect Liao Yang to be impotent. I don't know if it's true or not. Could it be a fake news that the city lord's mansion deliberately made up?" She was a little suspicious. "I don't think so. It's said that Liao Yang's wedding is near. If the city lord's mansion deliberately spread some false news, I think there's no need to hold the wedding next month." Leng Ruoxue said. "Hehe. This is karma." Grape said with relief. "Miss, now that Liao Yang is impotent, his wedding should be cancelled, right?" Grape said nosily. "I don't think so. The city lord of Plentiful City won't let this news spread. Moreover, didn't he send someone to the Alchemist Guild headquarters to invite someone?" Leng Ruoxue said with a chuckle. She wondered who the person from the Alchemist Guild headquarters would be. It would be great if it was Luiyue, she thought. "I hope no one can save him," Grape said through gritted teeth. "Ha! It doesn't matter if you save him. At most, you'll make him impotent again." Leng Ruoxue teased, not taking it to heart. What Miss said is really good." Grape said in agreement. After that, the two of them looked at each other. The meaning in their eyes was obvious. Because of Liao Yang's injury, both the city lord's mansion and the courtyard had temporarily calmed down. However, under this calm surface, there was a bloody incident that could break out at any time. The main reason why Liao Hui was willing to endure it was that the people from the Alchemist Guild headquarters had not arrived yet. After waiting for several days, the alchemists from the Alchemist Guild headquarters finally arrived. As Liao Yang's injuries were more serious, the Alchemist Guild headquarters had specially sent a vice guild master over. However, this person was not Luiyue. After Liao Hui received the report from his subordinate, he personally went to the door to welcome this important guest from the Alchemist Guild headquarters. "President Shen, I've been waiting for you for a long time. I've been waiting for the stars and the moon. You've finally come," Liao Hui said excitedly when he saw the vice president sent by the Alchemist Guild headquarters. Of course, the reason why he acted this way was mostly an act. After all, he had to show that he valued the other party so that the other party would do his best to treat young heir's injuries. "Hehe. Hello, City Lord." A tall, middle-aged man said calmly and politely. He was so polite because he didn't know how to answer Liao Hu's words. "I haven't seen how sick your son is. If you can't be cured, you'll eat me up." After all, as an alchemist, what he was most afraid of was that his family members would place all their hopes on him. This would cause them a lot of pressure. After all, alchemists were not omnipotent. "President Shen, I'm sorry for the delay. Please come in quickly." Liao Hui pretended to be calm and said. This vice president's name was Shen Nua, and she was an alchemist imperial master. This was an existence that was only second to an alchemy god. And the only alchemy god in the divine realm was that president who had always appeared and disappeared like a ghost. However, the president of the Alchemist Guild headquarters was too mysterious, and no one knew his whereabouts. Thus, the people who usually took charge of the Alchemist Guild headquarters were the three vice presidents. The three vice presidents each carried out their own duties and managed the Alchemist Guild headquarters in an orderly manner, so the entire Alchemist Guild could be considered harmonious. "City Lord Liao, please take me to see young Lord Liao's injuries first," Shen Nua said as she walked. From Liao Hu's words, it was clear that he wanted to treat him well first. However, he didn't come here to enjoy himself. As an alchemist, he had a heavy sense of responsibility. If he didn't see the patient's condition, how could he be in the mood for anything else? "President Shen has specially come for my son. I originally wanted to let you rest for a while. But since President Shen wants to see my son's injury first, then I can only respectfully comply." Actually, when he first saw Shen Nua, he wanted to drag her to treat his son's injuries. However, Shen Nua's identity was extraordinary. Even if he was anxious, he did not dare to rush her too much. After all, she was not his subordinate. If he were to calculate carefully, Shen Nua's status in the divine world was much higher than his. Not to mention that he did not dare to easily offend Shen Nua. Even the Divine Master's estate would not easily provoke these alchemist and weapon master with extraordinary status. "City Lord Liao, you don't have to be so polite with me. Young Lord Liao's injury is the most important," Shen Nua said disapprovingly. In fact, the reason why he came here without stopping was mainly because he didn't want to stay in Plentiful City for too long. Although there was a considerable distance between the Alchemist Guild headquarters and Plentiful City, he didn't mind. After seeing Liao Yang's injury, he would treat it if he could, and if he couldn't, he would leave immediately. Who asked him to come here, and not willingly. After Liao Hui sent someone to the Alchemist Guild headquarters to ask an alchemist to treat Liao Yang's injury, the 3 vice guild leaders had a discussion and wanted to send a saint alchemist to convey the message. After all, they were well aware of Liao Yang's reputation and the reason for Liao Yang's injury, which made their impression of him even worse. The 3 of them were not stupid and did not think that an alchemist should have the heart to save all living beings. However, Plentiful City belonged to the God Lord's estate, so, for the sake of the God Lord's estate, they had to send an outstanding alchemist to treat Liao Yang's injuries. However, who knew that the person who came was too ambitious. He was not satisfied with the alchemist they sent, and wanted the 3 of them to personally treat him. He even said that if they did not personally treat their young master's injuries, they would be looking down on the Divine Lord's estate. When the 3 of them heard the man's unreasonable words, they were furious. However, they did not want to fall out with the God Lord's estate. Therefore, they had no choice but to send an unlucky person to meet Liao Yang. It was his fault for losing the bet. I'll thank President Shen first, Liao Hui said with a smile. After that, Liao Hui took his time to bring Shen Nua to Liao Yang's room. When they arrived at Liao Yang's room, Shen Nua carefully checked on Liao Yang's injuries, but she did not say a word. When she saw that he had become silent, Liao Hui's heart instantly jumped into his throat. Damn it, can he be saved or not? You should just tell me. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. At this time, Liao Yang's injuries had almost recovered after the treatment of the elixir. The only thing that had not recovered, and what they were most concerned about, was Liao Yang's impotence. Liao Yang was Liao Hui's only son. If he was really impotent, wouldn't the Liao family have no descendants? This was absolutely unacceptable to Liao Hui, and even more so to Liao Yang. However, Shen Nua did not say anything for a long time, so even if Liao Hui was anxious, he could only endure it. Can my injuries be cured? Liao Hui could bear it, but Liao Yang couldn't. Please forgive me for not being able to help you with young Lord Liao's injuries. Upon hearing Liao Yang's question, Shen Nua helplessly replied. His injury there was too serious, and even the best healing medicinal pill could not heal the injury there. Moreover, the veins and arteries there were all shattered. Aren't you an alchemist from the Alchemist Guild headquarters? Why can't you cure my injuries? With your strength, what qualifications do you have to stay in the Alchemist Guild headquarters? I'm going to file a complaint to the Alchemist Guild headquarters and have them expel you. When Liao Yang heard that the man in front of him said that he couldn't cure him, he was instantly enraged and shouted without a care. When Liao Hui heard Liao Yang's words, his expression changed drastically, and he quickly gave his son a look, telling him not to say anything. Although he was very disappointed when he heard that Shen Nua couldn't cure Liao Yang, Shen Nua's status was obvious. He wasn't someone that this prodigal could insult as he pleased. However, Liao Yang, who was in a rage, obviously did not notice his father's gaze. At this time his heart was filled with anger and despair. Chapter 1476. Meeting Shen Nua 1. Whether I have the qualifications to stay in the Alchemist Guild headquarters is not something a young brat like you can decide. If you want to complain, go ahead. However, I can tell you bluntly that if I can't cure an injury, no one in the Alchemist Guild headquarters can cure it. Shen Nua said coldly. After he finished speaking to Liao Yang, he stood up and said to Liao Hui, City Lord Liao, I can't do anything about your son's injuries. Please find someone else. Goodbye. Your Excellency Shen Nua. Please wait. After Shen Nua finished speaking to them, she left without even turning her head back. However, Liao Hui could not let Shen Nua leave like this. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to ask for help from the Alchemist Guild headquarters in the future. After all, no one in the divine realm was willing to offend an alchemist. At that time, the God Lord's estate would also blame him. Compared to his son's injury, This consequence was even more unbearable for him. However, with Shen Nua's God King level cultivation, if she really wanted to leave, how could Liao Hui catch up to her? He had just chased her out of the room, and Shen Nua was already gone. This made him both angry and annoyed. In Liao Yang's room, Zui looked at Liao Yang with a smile and slowly said, "Young master is really too impulsive. Even if he can't cure your injury, you can't be angry at an alchemist. What does it have to do with you? If he can't even treat such a small injury, it's clear that his skills are inferior." Liao Yang was already in a fit of anger, and when he heard Zui's words, he became even angrier. "This small injury? Young master, your injury may not be big, but it's very troublesome. I've never heard of any alchemist in the divine world who can cure the injury there." Zui reminded with a faint smile. In fact, he was gloating. That guy just now couldn't do it, but that doesn't mean others can too. If the Alchemist Guild's 3 vice guild leaders are willing to help treat me, I will definitely be able to recover. Liao Yang shouted with confidence. "Young master, that esteemed one just now isn't an ordinary alchemist. He's one of the 3 great vice guild leaders of the Alchemist Guild headquarters, Shen Nua. Now that he said he can't cure you, do you think there's anyone else who can cure your injuries?" Zui said helplessly. However, in his heart, he looked down on Liao Yang's arrogance. Not to mention that Liao Yang's injury could not be cured. Even if it could be cured, after offending Shen Nua, he did not think that the Alchemist Guild headquarters would still send people to treat Liao Yang. What? Hearing Zui's words, Liao Yang's face turned pale. He was obviously frightened by the identity of the alchemist just now. "You're lying to me, I don't believe you." After a long while, Liao Yang shouted again. "What do you not believe?" Liao Hui, who just returned to his room, asked coldly. "Father, he actually told me that the person just now was the vice president of the Alchemist Guild headquarters. Quickly tell me this isn't true." Liao Yang ignored his father's ugly expression and shouted in disbelief. "This is real." Liao Hui said, somewhat resentful that he had failed to live up to his expectations. Did this thing that was incompetent and good at causing trouble not know that they had a request from the Alchemist Guild headquarters? He actually spoke to him like that. If it was an ordinary alchemist, he could have sent someone to apologize, but he just had to be the Alchemist Guild's supreme vice president. This wasn't something that could be coaxed with a simple apology. "Father, he's really Shen Nua?" Hearing his father's words, Liao Yang was truly afraid. He could choose not to believe Zui's words, but he had no choice but to believe his own father's words. What should he do? Could it be that there's someone else who would dare to impersonate him? Liao Hui shouted angrily. After he chased out of the room, he did not find any traces of Shen Nua. This made him extremely angry. If the person who angered Shen Nua and drove her away was not his only son, he would definitely strangle that bastard to death. "Father, what should I do? You have to help me. I don't want to be a cripple." Liao Yang said with a long face. "You're asking me, but who should I ask? Weren't you very powerful just now? I gave you a look to tell you to shut up, but you didn't listen. Now you want to ask me?" Liao Hui was very angry. "Father, I was wrong. I only lost my composure when I heard that my injuries could not be treated, and I did not know his identity. I am willing to apologize to him." Liao Yang said with a face full of fear. He also knew that the Alchemist Guild headquarters could not be offended, because if they really angered the Alchemist Guild headquarters, it would be difficult for them to ask for help from the Alchemist Guild headquarters if someone from their side was injured in the future. "Guilty? Do you think that you'll be fine just by apologizing? He's the vice president. Even your father doesn't dare to speak to him like that. You're so good, you actually dare to question his status as an alchemist." Liao Hui suppressed his anger and said, "Father, I really know I was wrong." Liao Yang's eyes were filled with tears as he said pitifully, "City Lord, the matter just now couldn't be completely blamed on young master. Moreover, what was the use of saying all this now? We should think of how to appease Sir Shen Nua's anger." Zui said, "I also want to. However, Sir Shen Nua has already left the City Lord's mansion in a fit of anger. However, I've already sent people to look for him." Liao Hui sighed and glared at Liao Yang before saying helplessly, Zui, you have to help me think of a good idea. I don't want Sir Shen Nua to leave in a huff. Liao Hui said, City Lord. The young master will definitely have to pay for the crime himself. As for the rest, let me think about it. Zui said after some thought. Good. Then you should quickly think of a countermeasure. Liao Hui urged. Okay, you'll take my leave first. Zui gave a slight bow and left Liao Yang's room. After Zui left, Liao Yang was a little dissatisfied. Father, why did you ask him to leave so quickly? I'm sick now, shouldn't he be serving me? Serve you, my ass. He's a guest, not your servant, so don't put on the airs of a young master in front of him. If I hear such words again, don't blame me for being cruel. Liao Hui was so angry that he shouted at the top of his lungs. This prodigal. He had just driven Shen Nua away, and now he wanted to find trouble with Zui. Unfortunately, these two people were not to be trifled with. It was a pity that this blind son of his could not see through it. Sigh. If she had known that he would become like this, she would have just strangled him. After he finished speaking angrily, Liao Hui slammed the door and left Liao Yang's room. After being scolded again, Liao Yang blamed all his hatred on Zui. He didn't dare to offend Shen Nua, but would he be afraid of a small guest elder? From the beginning to the end, he had never taken Zui seriously. No matter how many times his father had told him, in his eyes, Zui was only a subordinate of the city lord's mansion. Since he was a subordinate, there was no reason for him to not listen to him. Chapter 1477. Meeting Shen Nua. 2. Zui left Liao Yang's room and returned to his study. At this moment, one of his trusted aides was already waiting for him in the study. Master. Seeing Zui walk in, the guard hurriedly saluted. Yes, what's the news? Zui asked indifferently. Master. Sir Shen Nua has moved into the city's full moon restaurant, and I have already sent people to keep an eye on her. The guard reported. Moon Pavilion? Why didn't he leave Plentiful City? Zui muttered to himself with a face full of regret. His words made the guard break out in cold sweat. This subordinate does not know, the guard hurriedly said, and couldn't help but secretly think, Master. You're now a guest elder of the city lord's mansion. Even if he didn't do his best for the city lord's mansion, there was no need to drag them down. Those who didn't know would definitely think that there was a deep hatred between their master and the city lord's mansion. In fact, he was well aware that his master was bored. You may leave, Zui sighed. Yes, the guard replied and left the study. After the guard left, Zui summoned Dark and said, Go and tell Lung Ruoxue. Just say that the people from the Alchemist Guild headquarters have arrived, and are now living in the Full Moon restaurant. Yes, Master. When Dark heard that it had to report the situation, it was overjoyed. This way it could eat delicious fruits again. It had already destroyed all the fruits that Lung Ruoxue had given it the last time. Little Dark flapped its wings and flew out of Zui's study room happily. It went straight to Lung Ruoxue's residence. In the courtyard, Lung Ruoxue was lying in the garden, basking in the sun. When she saw the little bee that had suddenly appeared in front of her, she knew that there was new news. Dark. You're here. Lung Ruoxue stretched out her hand and held it in her arms. Master told me to tell you that the people from the Alchemist Guild headquarters have arrived, and are now living in the Moonview restaurant. Let's go, Dark said straightforwardly. Then, he looked at Lung Ruoxue expectantly. Lung Ruoxue chuckled when she saw the expression on Dark's face. She then took out a few more fruits and handed them to him. The moment Dark saw the delicious fruits, its eyes lit up and it immediately kept them into its spatial pocket. It then looked at Lung Ruoxue with a satisfied and grateful expression. What an easily satisfied little fellow. Just a few fruits were enough to make it so happy. Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but think to herself, beasts are easier to satisfy than humans. After delivering the message and getting the fruit that it liked, it flew away with satisfaction. Miss, why do you want to see someone from the Alchemist Guild headquarters? Grape asked after Dark left. I want him to help me deliver a message. Lung Ruoxue said with a faint smile. Although she didn't know who the person from the Alchemist Guild headquarters was, she was sure that Liyue wouldn't reject her if she asked him to bring a message to her. Does young lady have an acquaintance in the Alchemist Guild? Grape's face was full of surprise. He thought to himself, Miss is really too amazing. She's in the Divine Mainland, and yet she still knows people in the Alchemist Guild. One should know that even people in the divine world might not be able to get to know an alchemist. Moreover, alchemists who can enter the Alchemist Guild's headquarters are all symbols of status and status. Ordinary alchemists couldn't even enter the headquarters. Yes. Lung Ruoxue nodded. Miss, doesn't that mean we'll have to go out later? Grape asked. We do have to go out. Grape, go find Wang Tong and ask him to help us arrange it. Lung Ruoxue thought for a moment and ordered. Wang Tong was one of Zuoyi's confidants. Besides, Zuoyi had told her clearly that if she had anything to do, she could just look for Wang Tong. Yes. Yes, sir. Grape nodded and left. After the arrangements were made, Lung Ruoxue and the other two left the courtyard quietly. The three people walking on the street were all dressed in men's clothing. This was a decision Lung Ruoxue had made after the incident with Liao Yang. After all, her current strength was too low. If she was constantly targeted by others, it would bring her trouble. However, even though she was dressed in men's clothing, she was still so handsome that no one dared to look at her directly. Miss, I heard that the Full Moon restaurant is the best in Plentiful City, but it's not located on the most prosperous street in the city. Grape told Lung Ruoxue the news he had just heard. Well, since we know the address, let's go there directly. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. Miss over there. Grape pointed to a road on the left. After the three of them found the Moonview restaurant, Zuoyi's confidant, who was hiding in the dark, immediately recognized her. Miss Lung. After the guard appeared, he greeted her softly. You've got the wrong person, I'm Master Lung. Lung Ruoxue chuckled. Master Lung. The guard wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and quickly changed his words. Be good. Are you all here to protect that alchemist from the Alchemist Guild headquarters? Lung Ruoxue raised her head and asked with a smile. No, the guard sighed lightly, his face was full of helplessness. Actually, his heart was clear. This young lady who disguised herself as Master Lung. What she wanted to say was obviously to monitor. You guys should know which room he's staying in, right? Lung Ruoxue held back her laughter and asked. He's staying in VIP room number 1 on the 3rd floor. The guard said in a low voice. Thank you, we'll go find him. Lung Ruoxue asked the alchemist's room and brought the grapes and lotus seeds into the Full Moon restaurant. Do you guys want to eat or stay? When the waiter saw Lung Ruoxue and the other two, he immediately came forward to welcome them. With a single glance, he was even more shocked. The young master in the lead was really beautiful. Although the word beautiful should not be used to describe a man, he really could not find any other words. Let's eat. Lung Ruoxue said directly. The three of you, please follow me to the 2nd floor. The waiter smiled and brought Lung Ruoxue to the dining room on the 2nd floor. After Lung Ruoxue had ordered her food, he immediately turned around and went to prepare. As it wasn't mealtime, there weren't many people in the restaurant. There were only 2 or 3 tables scattered around, so the restaurant could be said to be very quiet. Miss, aren't we here to see that pill master? Why are you eating here? Grape asked with a face full of question marks. Chapter 1478. Meeting Shen Nuo 3. Yes. Lung Ruoxue nodded. She was not in a hurry to answer Grape's question. Miss, why are we eating here? Seeing that she did not get the answer she wanted, Grape asked again, unwilling to give up. If we don't eat something first, the waiter will stop us if we go up to look for him. After all, this is the best in Plentiful City, so how can we let our guests be disturbed? Moreover, that alchemist was here to treat Liao Yang, but he didn't stay in the city lord's mansion. Doesn't this show that there's a problem? Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. Although Zuoyi didn't explain to her why the alchemist would stay in the Full Moon restaurant, it wasn't hard to guess the reason why the alchemist from the Alchemist Guild would stay in the Full Moon restaurant. It must be because the alchemist couldn't cure Liao Yang's injury, so he had a conflict with the Liao family. Otherwise, the Liao family would treat the alchemist as an important guest. Just as Leng Ruoxue finished speaking, the dishes that she had ordered earlier were served. You guys are pretty fast. Leng Ruoxue praised. Hehe, this is a must. How can I let the guests wait for long? The waiter said embarrassedly under Leng Ruoxue's praise. Please enjoy your meal. After the waiter finished speaking, he bowed slightly and turned to leave. Leng Ruoxue and the other two casually ordered some food, then stood up and left the restaurant, heading straight up to the third floor. This full moon restaurant had a total of 3 floors. The first floor was the main hall, the second floor had a large dining hall in addition to the guest rooms, and the third floor included ordinary guest rooms and VIP rooms. However, there were only 3 VIP rooms, and all of them were sky-high prices. They were definitely not something that ordinary people could afford. Leng Ruoxue and the other two found the first VIP room. Grape came forward and knocked on the door. A deep male voice was heard from the room. The door isn't locked, come in directly. Shen, who was in the room, said. Upon hearing the words of the room's owner, Leng Ruoxue and the other two immediately pushed the door open and walked in. Who are you? Shen, who was sitting in the living room, looked at Leng Ruoxue and the other two who were not too far away and asked curiously. These 3 people were obviously not the waiters who had come to deliver the dishes to him. Previously, he had ordered a few dishes and had the waiters bring them to his room. However, he had not expected that the people who had entered would be strangers. If he had known that this would happen, he would not have let them in so easily. When he thought of this, he could not help but feel a little regretful. Ai, how did he treat this place as Mayan City? I'm Leng Ruhan. I heard that an alchemist from the Alchemist Guild's main branch lives in the Full Moon Pavilion, so I've come to seek an audience. Leng Ruoxue replied very courteously. As for using her brother's name, she had done so with a clear conscience. You guys want to refine pills? Shen asked, a little puzzled. There was also an alchemist branch in Plentiful City. Other than the extremely difficult medicinal pills, they basically had all the commonly used ones. Why did this young lady who was disguised as a young master need to go through so much trouble to come and find him? Moreover, how did she know that she was here? Could it be that this young lady is from the city lord's mansion? Actually, the reason why he could see through Leng Ruoxue's female identity was because of his special cultivation technique. Hence, even if Leng Ruoxue's disguise was very good, she would not be able to hide it from him. However, he had no intention of exposing Leng Ruoxue. And naturally, Leng Ruoxue would not know that her gender had already been exposed. We're not here to ask for medicinal pills, Leng Ruoxue said with a faint smile. Her beautiful eyes were secretly sizing up the man in front of her. This man looked to be around 40 years old. He had an extraordinary bearing and had the aura of a superior. His appearance was also very handsome. If this was in her previous life, he would definitely be considered a diamond-ranked man. Besides, didn't people say that a man was a flower in his 40s? Then this man was definitely a flower in full bloom. In addition to his identity as an alchemist, he would definitely attract many bees, butterflies, and so on. Then why did you come to find me? Shen did not want to beat around the bush and test each other, so she said directly, I would like to ask your excellency to help me deliver a letter. Leng Ruoxue looked at the middle-aged man and revealed her motive. Are you treating me as a messenger? Shen asked, feeling a little amused. This little girl was really bold. She did not even know who he was, and yet she dared to ask him to be her messenger. It can be considered so. I have no choice. Leng Ruoxue pretended to be pitiful as she spoke. Actually, the reason why she wanted this person to help her deliver the message was because she wanted to use various methods to tell those people she knew that she had come to the God world. How can you not have a way? Shen asked curiously. I don't know where the Alchemist Guild headquarters is. Although Grape and Lotus Seed knew that the Alchemist Guild headquarters was in Mayan City, they had never been there before. She also didn't expect to meet someone from the Alchemist Guild headquarters in Plentiful City. In addition, she had made an appointment with Big Brother Ning to go to the Ning residence, so she naturally couldn't go to Mayan City with this alchemist. Moreover, he might not be willing to bring them along. In fact, before Liao Yang's incident, she had wholeheartedly wanted to go to the Ning family to find her godfather. However, with Liao Yang's example, she felt that it was better for more people to know that she was now in the divine realm. In this way, her safety factor would also increase greatly. After all, she did not want the same thing to happen again. The person you want to bring the letter to is in the Alchemist Guild headquarters. After hearing Lung Ruoxia's words, Shen Nua raised her eyebrows and asked, "Yes." Lung Ruoxia nodded. "What is it called?" Shen Nua asked again. Although he might not know all the alchemists in the Alchemist Guild headquarters, he still had to ask what he needed to ask. "Luwe." Lung Ruoxia spat out the two words softly. "Which Luwe?" Shen Nua was stunned, and she muttered in her heart. The person this little girl was talking about, was it the one she knew? Are there many people called Luwe in the Alchemist Guild? Lung Ruoxia asked, feeling a little puzzled. "There's only one," Shen Nua said with a smile. "He's the one I'm looking for." Lung Ruoxia nodded. "You really know him? Do you know his identity?" Shen Nua still didn't quite believe Lung Ruoxia's words, so she asked again. "Yes, I know his identity," Lung Ruoxia said helplessly. Hearing Lung Ruoxia's affirmative answer, Shen Nua started to size her up seriously. This little girl was truly a rare beauty. At least, he had not seen anyone more beautiful than her in the many years he had been in the immortal realm. And when she was dressed in men's clothes, she had a different style. Could this girl be Luya's little lover? He couldn't help but let his thoughts run wild. However, he had known Liyue for many years, but he had never heard of Liyue having a woman. "Since you know his identity, why don't you let me take you to the Alchemist Guild headquarters to meet him?" After sizing her up for a long time, Shen Nua asked curiously. "I've made an appointment with someone to go to another place. Otherwise, I'll go to the Alchemist Guild headquarters with you. However, are you really willing to take me there?" Lung Ruoxia explained, but at the same time, she raised her own doubts. "Ha ha ha. I definitely can't take you there now, because I have to go somewhere else," Shen Nua said with a smile. "I knew it." Lung Ruoxia lamented in her heart before she continued. "Then can you help me bring a letter? It's no problem to bring you a message, but I won't be returning to the Alchemist Guild headquarters for the time being," Shen Nua said on account of Liyue. He did not lose anything by bringing a letter. Moreover, it was for Liyue. However, he could not return to the Alchemist Guild headquarters for the time being, so he had to make things clear with this little girl. "It doesn't matter, as long as the letter is delivered," Lung Ruoxia said nonchalantly. She was also going to the Ning family to look for her godfather. The main reason she asked him to bring a letter to Liyue was to prevent herself from running into some ignorant people. "I can guarantee that he'll bring the letter to you," Shen Nua said with a smile. He had a pretty good impression of this little girl. Moreover, bringing a letter was as easy as lifting a finger. Right at this moment, a knock sounded on the door again. This time, Shen Nua did not directly let the other party in, but asked for the other party's identity. "Who is it?" Shen Nua asked. "Sir Shen Nua, I'm Liao Hui." The voice outside the door was extremely humble. "City Lord Liao. What's the matter?" Shen Nua's tone was extremely cold. He had never thought of hiding the fact that he was staying here from the city lord's manor. After all, they were the local tyrant here. However, he did not expect that Liao Hui's efficiency would be so low. He was not even comparable to a little girl. One must know that this little girl came to see him first. Lung Ruoxia did not expect the person who knocked on the door to be the city lord of Plentiful City. In addition to Shen Nua's cold tone, she was even more certain that there was some unhappiness between the two of them. "Sir Shen Nua, I've specially come to apologize to you," Liao Hui said helplessly from the other side of the door. Although it was quite embarrassing to be blocked outside the door, the other party's identity and status were above his. Therefore, even if he lost all his face, he had to accept it. Who asked him to not offend the Alchemist Guild headquarters? "City Lord Liao, you're being too serious." "I, Shen Nua, am not a petty person. You don't have to apologize to me. Furthermore, I really can't do anything about your young master's injuries." Shen Nua told him the truth. "Then I wonder if Sir Shen Nua can provide me with some clues. Who in the immortal realm can treat young heir's injuries?" Liao Hui begged in a low voice. City Lord Liao. I've said it before, your son's injuries can't be treated. Shen Nuo reminded. If we can find the president of the Alchemist Guild headquarters, will Yang Er's injuries have a chance? Liao Hui didn't give up and asked. Although this son wasn't successful, he was his only son. Therefore, he couldn't just leave him. You can try, but no one knows where the president is now. Shen Nuo did not break Liao Hui's hope and told him the truth. Thank you, Sir Shen Nuo, for your guidance. If there's a chance, I'll personally pay a visit to the Alchemist Guild headquarters to apologize. Goodbye. After Liao Hui finished speaking, he also got the answer he wanted and turned to leave. Since Shen Nuo was unable to treat Yang Er's injuries and said that he did not need to be punished, then there was naturally no need for him to shamelessly stay here and invite humiliation for himself. However, if there was a chance, he would still personally go to the Alchemist Guild headquarters. After Liao Hui left, Leng Ruoxue casually chatted with Shen Nuo for a while and passed the letter that she had prepared to Shen Nuo. Then, she left the Full Moon restaurant with Grape and Lotus Seed. However, on the way back to the courtyard, Grape and Lotus Seed looked at Leng Ruoxue as if they wanted to say something but hesitated. However, neither of them spoke. When they arrived at the courtyard, Leng Ruoxue returned to her temporary residence. She smiled as she looked at the grapes and lotus seed. Do you guys have something to say? Miss, the one called Shen Nuo just now, he seems to be the Alchemist Guild's vice guild master. Grape whispered. Chapter 1479, A Rainy Night 1. Oh. Leng Ruoxue replied indifferently. However, she did not have much of a reaction. This was something that Grape and Lotus Seed could not believe. Miss. He's the vice president of the Alchemist Guild headquarters. Grape reminded. Although she had never seen Shen Nuo before, Shen Nuo's name was definitely not unfamiliar to anyone in the firmament. Moreover, the Lu Yu that the young miss had mentioned was also one of the vice guild leaders of the Alchemist Guild headquarters. She really did not expect that the person the young miss wanted to bring the message to would actually be Lu Yu. Hehe. So what if he was the president of the Alchemist Guild headquarters? Grapes. Calm down. Leng Ruoxue laughed. Miss, the 3 vice guild leaders of the Alchemist Guild headquarters are of high status and authority. Their status in the divine realm is transcendent. Furthermore, they are the idols of all alchemists. Not only that, even those of us who are not alchemists greatly admire them. Grape said with a face full of yearning. Oh, Leng Ruoxue's reaction was still very calm. However, seeing her reaction, Grape actually felt a little depressed. Wasn't the young miss acting a little too calm? Grape. I'm hungry. Leng Ruoxue looked at the depressed Grape and chuckled. Oh, go get some food for Miss. Grape said resentfully. After he finished, he turned and left. After a short while, a few dishes that looked, smelled, and tasted good were served to Leng Ruoxue. After finishing her meal, Leng Ruoxue received an uninvited guest. This person was none other than the person who had led the way to make things difficult for her when she had just arrived at the city lord's residence. Leng Ruoxue did not speak first as she looked at the woman who appeared slightly ill at ease. The woman sat on the chair uneasily for a long time before she finally spoke. I know you don't want to see me, but I have something to ask of you. The woman's face turned red after she finished speaking. If you have anything to say, just say it. I don't like to beat around the bush. Leng Ruoxue said directly. Young master, you should know about young master's injury, right? The woman said carefully. As she spoke, she used her eyes to secretly observe Leng Ruoxue's reaction. Yes. Leng Ruoxue nodded and waited for him to continue. You've only been here for a short time, so you don't understand the city lord and the young master's character. The city lord won't let us off for the young master's injury. The woman said with some fear. What does this have to do with us? We're not the ones who injured Liao Yang. Leng Ruoxue pretended to be confused and asked. Even if it had nothing to do with us, the city lord would still place the blame on us, especially since the Phyllis sisters are dead. Furthermore, according to what I know, the city lord had once sent people to the Phyllis sisters' family to seek revenge for the young lord. Unfortunately, Their family had long since declined and no one knew where they went. Thus, we naturally became the target of the city lord's anger and took the blame for the sisters. After the woman finished speaking, a trace of sadness appeared on her face. How do you know all this? Lung Ruoxua asked curiously. It seemed like this lady was not simple. She had never heard Zui mention these things before. I have a clan brother working as a guard in the city lord's mansion. He's also one of the guards who's going on a mission this time. He told me this in secret. The woman said honestly. Oh, and then? Lung Ruoxua continued to play dumb. Actually, she didn't completely believe this woman's words, so she naturally wouldn't take the initiative to reply. I want you to cooperate with me. Let's escape this place together. Under Lung Ruoxia's half-smiling gaze, the woman finally mustered up the courage to reveal her plan. You actually want to escape? Didn't you always want to be the young madam? Lung Ruoxua asked in surprise. This woman had been with Liao Yang for so long. When did she change her personality? You still have to be alive to be one. They're coming to kill us. I don't want to stay here and let them slaughter me. The woman said angrily. That's just one aspect. Do you also know that Liao Yang is impotent and that there's no future with him? That's why you want to leave. Lung Ruoxua said. You're right. I know that. However, in my heart, wealth and glory are important, but my life is more important. The woman did not deny Lung Ruoxia's words. That makes sense. No matter how much money you have, it's useless even if you don't live to enjoy it. Lung Ruoxua agreed. Even though she didn't like this woman, she was a practical and smart woman. Then, are you willing to cooperate with me? The woman asked with uncertainty, her beautiful face still full of anticipation. Tell me your plans first. What are your arrangements? Lung Ruoxua avoided the question and did not answer it directly. I've already asked my clan brother to keep an eye on the situation in the city lord's mansion. Once there's any news, inform me immediately. However, he'll have to rely on you to guard the courtyard. The woman said. Rely on me? You want me to deal with those guards? You're thinking too highly of me. I'm only a mid-level deity. Lung Ruoxua laughed at herself. However, she was mumbling in her heart. Could it be that this woman knew that those guards were from the left wing? If that was the case, then this woman's background was very suspicious. Because in the past few days, she had almost never left the house and had never had any contact with the guards. Strength is not important. I know you're very smart, otherwise you wouldn't have been able to make us so obedient. So I believe you have a way to deal with those guards. The lady said confidently. Looking at her, Lung Ruoxua had no idea where her confidence came from. Could it be that she had been beaten silly by the grapes and lotus seed? But I really have no choice. Lung Ruoxua said helplessly. How is that possible? Don't tell me you want to stay here and wait for death. The woman's face was filled with disbelief and disappointment. She never thought that Lung Ruoxua would be so cowardly. However, she could not die with them. However, without anyone's cooperation, she couldn't leave the courtyard alone. Of course I don't want to wait for death, but I really can't deal with those guards. Why don't you find someone else to try? Lung Ruoxua suggested. If someone else could do this well, I wouldn't have come to you first. The woman was extremely disappointed. Even though she was a little embarrassed when she came, she believed that as long as she told Lung Ruoxua her thoughts, she would definitely agree. Who knew that she would actually say that there was no other way? What should she do? She didn't want to stay here and wait for death. But now she had a favor to ask of him, so she had to bear with her dissatisfaction. Chapter 1480, A Rainy Night 2. Miss Lung, you should have more confidence in yourself. I believe that you will definitely be able to think of a good way. The woman persuaded, unwilling to give up. You really think too highly of me. If I really had a way, why would I be trapped here for so long? In fact, I think you can gather all the women you're close to and come up with a good plan. One person is short, 3 people are long. There are so many of you, you can always come up with a solution. Lung Ruoxua advised. In reality, it wasn't difficult for her to leave. It was just that she didn't trust this woman, so she naturally wouldn't blindly join her. Those women only know how to be jealous and scheme against each other all day long. How could they have any good ideas? The woman said with a look of disdain. You can't say that. Besides, that was in the past. Now that we're at the juncture of life and death, as long as they don't want to die, they'll naturally try their best to think of a way. Don't underestimate the potential of human survival. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. But I'm afraid that someone will be afraid of death and betray us. The woman voiced out her worry. In reality, this was what she was most worried about. She understood those women too well. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone to look for Lung Ruoxue. You've been in the city lord's mansion for a long time, so you should know who would do such a thing, right? At the same time, you should know very well in your heart who will follow your lead and obey your orders. Do you still need me to teach you how to do it? Lung Ruoxue said calmly. All right. Then I'll try. However, I still hope to be able to work with you. The woman refused to give up. She didn't know why, but she had high hopes for Lung Ruoxue. If you can come up with a good plan, I can cooperate with you. Lung Ruoxue promised. The meaning behind her words was, don't let me make the decision. Good. When we're done discussing, I'll come and find you. After the woman finished speaking, she stood up and left. After the woman left, Grape said with a look of disdain. She really knows how to use others as her gun, and leave when she wants to. You even want us to cooperate. Humph. Who does she think she is? Hehe. If she doesn't need our help, it's fine to cooperate with her. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. Miss, don't be so kind, who knows what she's up to? She doesn't trust those women, but we don't trust her. Grape reminded him cautiously. I know, my little housekeeper. I didn't agree to her request, did I? Lung Ruoxue could not help but laugh. Did she look like such a kind person? 2 days after this interlude, Lung Ruoxue finally received some good news. Xiao Budian had completed his cultivation. With that, she could leave whenever she wanted to. The woman who wanted to cooperate with her had also received no news. Not only that, there was no important news from Zui either. For a moment, everything seemed to be calm again. At this moment, in the city lord's mansion, Liao Hui was sitting in his study room with a sad face. His son's injuries had no hope of being treated, and according to his subordinate's report, Shen had already left Plentiful City. As for Philip's family, they were nowhere to be found. Therefore, his current mood could be said to be extremely vexed. City Lord, the young master is throwing a tantrum again. Suddenly, the guard's voice rang out from outside the door. Hearing the guard's words, Liao Hui was even more annoyed. What does he want? Go and tell him. I won't stop him if he wants to die. Liao Hui shouted angrily. He was extremely disappointed with this useless son of his. If he didn't sneak out of the courtyard to meet the two bitches in private, this wouldn't happen. Although the news of Liao Yang's impotence had not been spread out yet, paper cannot cover fire. It was hard to guarantee that this matter would not be leaked. Therefore, he had been thinking about how to deal with those who knew about it. However, there were many people who knew about this matter, and he could not kill everyone. Alas! He was in a dilemma. Moreover, if that family found out about this, Liao Yang's marriage might not be able to happen. Men, get Zui to come see me. Liao Hui frowned and ordered the guards outside the door. Yes, the guard responded, and not long after, the left wing was invited. Zui pushed the door open, and saw Liao Hui walking around in the study room like a trapped beast. City Lord, I wonder why you've called me here? Zui asked. In fact, he had been waiting for Liao Hui's summon these 2 days. However, he knew that Liao Hui was in a bad mood, so he naturally wouldn't take the initiative to come to his door and meet him. Zui, I need you to help me think of a way. Young or can't be humane, you can't leak this. Liao Hui said seriously. City Lord, are you afraid that family will find out? Zui asked. Yes, I've spent a lot of effort to facilitate this marriage, so there can't be any mistakes. Liao Hui said very seriously. City Lord, there's something I don't know if I should say. Zui said hesitantly. If you have something to say, just say it. You also know that in the entire City Lord's mansion, the person I trust the most and rely on the most is you. Liao Hui quickly said. City Lord, The young master's wedding is getting closer and closer. Do you think this matter can be kept a secret? Zui asked. Even if you can't hide it, you have to. This marriage is very important to Yang, Liao Hui said helplessly. However, if that family finds out about young master's condition, I'm afraid they will. Zui only finished half of his sentence, but he believed that Liao Hui would understand what he meant. As long as they get married, it's useless even if they know. Can they still break the marriage? Unless they don't care about their reputation anymore, Liao Hui said disapprovingly. Since he had decided to hide it, he was naturally confident in his heart. Therefore, the key problem now was that this matter could not be leaked out. In other words, that family could not know. What the city lord said makes sense. Zui flattered on purpose, but he despised Liao Hui's way of doing things in his heart. However, that family wasn't a good one, so he naturally didn't feel sorry for that lady. Left wing. What do you think we should do to prevent this matter from being leaked? Liao Hui asked. This was what he was most worried about. City Lord, you want to kill everyone who knows about this? Zui understood. It seemed that Liao Hui didn't find Philip's clansmen and wanted to take his anger out on them. Silencing them was just an excuse. After all, as the city lord, he had to have a reason to kill people. Chapter 1481, A Rainy Night 3. I do have that idea, but I don't want to kill the guards in the residence. Liao Hui thought for a while and said. Those guards were very loyal to him, and he was very sure that they would not betray the city lord's mansion. The city lord is referring to the woman in the courtyard. Zui asked, pretending to be uncertain. Humph. Yang was destroyed by a woman, so I don't intend to let those women live. Although he had hesitated before, he needed a few punching bags now. Otherwise, the anger in his heart would not be appeased. The young master? Zui hesitated. Does he care about the lives of those women now? If it wasn't for a woman, he wouldn't be like this. Liao Hui said angrily. Since the city lord has already made his decision, the left wing will support you fully. However, the fewer people who know about the matter of getting rid of those women, the better. Zui reminded. Yes, I plan to hand this matter over to Liao Cheng. Liao Hui said. Liao Cheng was his distant nephew, so he was the best person to do this. City Lord. It's not appropriate to let Liao Cheng handle this matter. Zui said. Why? He's from the Liao family, isn't that just right? Liao Hui asked in confusion. City Lord, don't blame me for being overly sensitive. You know about the young master's current situation. Although the city lord only has one son, he has many nephews. Among these people, it's hard to guarantee that there won't be any disloyal thoughts. Therefore, the city lord must be on guard. Zui said very cautiously. In fact, his words were rather implicit. Moreover, Liao Hui was an old fox and would definitely understand what he meant. As expected, Liao Hui fell into deep thought without a word after Zui finished speaking. After a long while, Liao Hui slowly said, It's all thanks to your reminder. Who do you think should do this? Actually, it's just getting rid of a few women. The city lord can just send some of his confidants to do it. There's no need to get the Liao family. After all, it's a critical time now, and it's hard to guarantee that some of the Liao family won't have other ideas. Zui said after some thought. Yes, I know what to do. Liao Hui nodded. Then this subordinate will take his leave. Zui said when he saw that there was nothing else. Yes. Liao Hui nodded and immediately called his confidant over to give some instructions. After Zui returned to his room, he found his trusted subordinate and ordered him to inform Lung Ruoxua of this news, so that she could be mentally prepared. When Lung Ruoxua heard this news, she wasn't surprised and had no intention of retreating without a fight. However, when the woman came looking for her again with a face full of panic, Lung Ruoxua knew that she had also heard the news. Miss Lung, the city lord is going to kill us. What do we do now? The woman said with a face full of fear. You've been discussing for 2 days. Haven't you come up with a good idea? Lung Ruoxua asked calmly. When those women heard what I said, they were scared to death. How could they think of a way? Miss Lung, we must leave this place as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'm afraid we'll die here. The woman warned. I also want to leave, but there has to be a way. Lung Ruoxia's face was filled with helplessness. Don't tell me we can only wait here for death? The woman said unwillingly. Do you want to die? Lung Ruoxia asked with a smile. Of course I don't. The woman immediately said. Who would want to die if they could live well? Since you don't want to die, I can only rise up and resist. Lung Ruoxia reminded. How do we resist? Our strength isn't high. How can we be compared to the well-trained guards of the city lord's mansion? The woman was in a dilemma. She wanted to run, but she didn't have the confidence to do so. Otherwise, she wouldn't have needed his help and would have run away by herself. We can't fight them head-on, but what if we use some extreme methods? Even if you show your enthusiasm, those guards may not be able to complete their task as they wish. Lung Ruoxia said indifferently. Extreme methods? The woman was confused. What kind of method was considered extraordinary? That's up to you guys to think about. I don't know how to use crooked ways. Lung Ruoxia said irresponsibly, and her words made Grape and Lotus Seed laugh in their hearts. Thank you for your reminder. I think I know what to do. The woman stood up and immediately went back to prepare. Miss, you're so bad. After the woman left, Grape could not help but smile. How am I bad? Didn't you always say that I'm too kind? Lung Ruoxia laughed evilly. That's right. Miss is just too kind. Grape quickly echoed. Miss, shouldn't we also make some preparations? Lotus Seed said, eager to try. Looking at Lotus Seed's face full of anticipation, Lung Ruoxia couldn't help but sigh. Lotus Seed, you've been corrupted. Miss, I didn't learn anything bad. Lotus Seed looked at Lung Ruoxia with a wronged expression. All right. You didn't go astray. It's just that your potential has been unearthed. Is this enough? Lung Ruoxia was in a good mood as she teased hee. After waiting for so many days, she could finally do something big. She was also quite looking forward to those women who only knew how to be jealous. She didn't know what kind of potential those women would be able to unleash in this life and death situation. Miss is the worst. Lotus Seed could hear Lung Ruoxia's teasing and deliberately complained. Lotus Seed, you can't wrong me. Lung Ruoxia pretended to be very aggrieved. Alright, let's stop messing around. Since they're prepared to make a move on us, let's make preparations. However, let's see how those women behave before we make a move. Following that, Lung Ruoxia ordered. Miss. We've been preparing and waiting for them to come. Grape said excitedly. Be more vigilant these few days. Lung Ruoxia said worriedly. Although she wanted to use underhanded means, there was still a huge difference in strength between the two parties. Hence, they still had to be more careful. Grape and Lotus Seed nodded, then went to prepare. That night, Shui came uninvited again. Lung Ruoxia, who was already lying on the bed, looked at the man standing in the room. Her face was filled with black lines. This guy really did not have the habit of knocking on the door. He had actually barged into his room in the middle of the night. Chapter 1482, A Rainy Night 4. It's so late. What are you doing here? Lung Ruoxia was speechless. I'm here to show my concern for you and see if you're too scared to sleep. Shui said matter-of-factly with an annoying smile on his face. You see it now? Lung Ruoxia was helpless. Well, I don't understand how you can be so calm. Shui was getting more and more curious about Lung Ruoxia. If other women knew that they were about to be killed, they would have been scared out of their wits. However, she was still able to fall asleep. This was out of his expectations and made him feel even more incredulous. What else could I have done? Lung Ruoxia asked instead of answering. You still don't want to leave now? Shui asked again. Someone is trying to kill us. If we just leave like this, how depressing would that be? I have to leave a gift for the other party before I leave. Lung Ruoxia's beautiful eyes flashed with a trace of coldness as she spoke coldly. I've said it before. If you want to leave, I can help you. However, if you insist on staying, I can't guarantee your absolute safety. Shui sighed softly. Although he had already guessed that Lung Ruoxia would not back down at the last minute, and ask him to send them off. He still felt a little depressed after hearing Lung Ruox's affirmative answer. This woman was too stubborn. Thank you for your kindness, but I'll take good care of myself. If there's nothing else, don't come here all the time. After all, you're now a guest of the city lord's mansion. Since you've taken someone's money, you have to help them get rid of their disaster. It's a taboo for an employer to betray others. Be careful not to lose your job. Lung Ruoxia chuckled. Since I dared to come, I naturally wouldn't let anyone find out. However, are you sure you can protect yourself? Zui could not help but ask. Yes. Lung Ruoxia nodded. In that case, take care. After Zui finished speaking, his figure flashed and he disappeared. For the next few days, the city lord's mansion that wanted to kill them did not make any moves. However, Lung Ruoxia and the rest did not let their guard down. After the woman received Lung Ruox's warning, she made some preparations, and even came to inform Lung Ruoxia. It was another stormy night. Lung Ruoxia and the other two were not sleepy at all. They stood in front of the window and looked at the night sky that was as dark as ink and flashing with lightning. Their mood was surprisingly good. Miss, I wonder if the city lord's mansion will send someone over tonight. Grape's beautiful face was full of anticipation. Grape, after tonight we can leave this place. Lung Ruoxia said as she caressed the little guy's soft fur. Sister, I can take you away now. The little guy quickly expressed his position. No rush. We have to leave a gift for the city lord of Plentiful City before we leave. Lung Ruox's beautiful face was filled with an evil smile. A gift? Why aren't you giving it to me? When the little guy heard that he had to leave a present for the bad guy, he immediately said in dissatisfaction. Because those gifts were specially prepared by my sister for the city lord of Plentiful City. Lung Ruoxia explained with a smile. Sister, I also want a present. The little guy pouted his little mouth and said in a spoiled manner. Hee. Once we leave this place, Big Sister will prepare whatever Xiao Budian wants. However, we have to deal with the people from the city lord's mansion first. A cold glint flashed across Lung Ruox's beautiful eyes. Just now, Qingju had sent her a voice transmission, saying that the people from the city lord's mansion had arrived. Just as Lung Ruoxia finished her sentence, the three of them heard footsteps coming from the courtyard. It seemed like there were quite a number of people. The three of them looked at each other and laughed, but none of them left the room. Then a bang was heard. A loud sound was heard and the door was kicked open roughly. Following that, dozens of men in black rushed in. Their faces were covered with veils, only revealing their eyes. However, when they saw Lung Ruoxia, their eyes were filled with shock. Who are you people? How dare you barge into my young lattice room? When Grape saw those men in black, her eyes flashed and she questioned them loudly. Moreover, she despised these men in black in her heart. If they came to kill, so be it. But they were actually dressed in black. TSK, don't think that just because you're dressed in black and your faces are covered, you can't tell who sent you. We're here to send you on your way. Don't worry, we'll end the battle quickly. We won't let you feel any pain. A black-clothed man said. He really couldn't bear to kill such a beautiful woman. Unfortunately, they had no choice but to obey the city lord's orders. Chapter 1483. The Fire Dragon's Might, 1. Thank you so much, you guys are really good people. Grape rolled his eyes and thought, you guys will end the battle quickly and won't cause us any pain. We'll be the opposite. We'll definitely make you regret taking this mission. Captain. Don't talk nonsense with them. Master is still waiting for us to return and report. Another man in black reminded him in a low voice. Brothers, let's send these three beauties on their way as soon as possible. We've done a good thing. The leader of the black-clothed men said with a look of pity. However, his pretentious expression caused Grape and Lotus Seed to look down on him. As for Lung Ruoxia, she couldn't even be bothered to look at them. With the captain's approval, the dozens of men in black were naturally eager to make a move. However, as soon as this idea took shape in their minds, they felt their hands and feet go soft. They could not hold the swords in their hands steadily, and some of them even dropped their swords to the ground. The leader of the men in black saw this and couldn't help but curse. Useless thing, you don't even want your weapon when you see a woman. So what if you haven't seen a woman in your hundreds of lives? Captain, it's none of our business. One of the men in black quibbled in a low voice. If it's not your business, then whose? You have to learn from me. Even in front of a beauty, you can't lose your weapon. The leader of the men in black said confidently. However, just as he finished speaking, there was a clang and the weapon in his hand fell to the ground. Instantly, the room became silent. All the men in black lowered their heads in unison, and the leader's face was filled with embarrassment. Ha ha ha. You still have the face to talk about others. Looking at the embarrassing state of the leader of the men in black, Grape could not help but laugh wildly. Her words also made the leader's face burn, as if it was on fire. What are you guys waiting for? Hurry up and kill them. The leader of the men in black was a little angry from embarrassment. Fuck, this was really embarrassing. But fortunately, these 3 women were about to die, and those subordinates didn't dare to tell anyone about his embarrassing incident. Captain, we've lost all our strength. One of the men in black couldn't help but remind him. Fuck, there are so many of us here, and we can't even kill 3 women? The leader of the men in black was furious. If he wasn't afraid of exposing his identity, he would have beaten these guys up a long time ago. They were really disappointing. Captain, a weak voice was heard, and dozens of men in black fell to the ground one after another. Seeing this, the leader of the men in black widened his eyes in disbelief. He even rubbed his eyes. What was going on? It's not the time to sleep. In the blink of an eye, he had actually become a loner. AI. How pitiful. Someone's become a commander. Grape pursed his lips and laughed. In fact, they had already drugged the room, so it was normal for those men in black to feel weak. As for the leader of the men in black, because he was stronger than the other men in black, the effect of the drug was much slower. However, he could not run away. Damn it. What did you just say? When the leader of the men in black heard Grape's words, he became even more furious. I said you're the commander of the light pole. Don't you understand human language? Grape provoked him on purpose. Just you wait. I won't let you off. The leader of the men in black threatened. Then he turned around and kicked the man in black beside him while shouting, Get up. Hurry up and get up. Hehe. Big sister, this black fellow is so interesting. Those people are already dead, and he still wants them to get up. If they really get up, wouldn't that be like a corpse coming back to life? The little guy said with an evil smile. That guy's been too agitated, so his mind is a little muddled. We can't learn from him. Lung Ruashua said in a serious tone. Their cooperation had further infuriated the leader of the men in black. What did you just say? I dare you to say that again. The leader of the men in black roared in anger. However, as soon as he finished shouting, he felt that something was wrong with his body. He immediately became vigilant. How did this happen? Could it be that they had fallen into someone else's trap? However, other than his own subordinates, even the master did not know that he would take action tonight. The leader of the men in black was bewildered. He was now certain that someone had betrayed them. As for who it was, he had no idea. The anger in his heart surged up, but he didn't dare to show it, in case the 3 women found out about his abnormality. You're not feeling well, right? Grape ignored the man in black's anger, and asked with a faint smile. How did you know? Upon hearing Grape's question, the man in black's heart tightened. Oh no. Could it be that they had discovered him? Do you know why they went limp and fainted? Grape asked with a smile. What do you want to say? The leader of the men in black suddenly felt a surge of fear in his heart, and he stuttered a little. In fact, long before you came, we had already drugged this room. The drug was supposed to repel insects, but you caught it. You guys are really unlucky. Grape chuckled and spoke the truth. The unspoken meaning of her words was nothing more than, you are the insects we want to drive away. You're despicable. When the leader of the men in black heard Grape's words, he said in anger and hatred, if looks could kill, Lung Ruashua and the other 2 would have died 1,000 times over. You dare to say we're despicable? This was the biggest joke in the world. So many of you came to kill 3 weak women, and you still say we're despicable. All right. Since you think so highly of us, then we won't be polite. We're despicable. If you have the ability, kill us now. Grape said provocatively. You think I can't kill you? The leader of the black-robed men roared in anger. He raised the sword in his hand, and was about to swing it at Lung Ruoxue and the other 2. However, with a clang, his sword fell to the ground once again, and his arm drooped down. Ha ha ha. Is this what you meant by you can kill us? Seeing this, Grape was extremely happy. Chapter 1484. The Fire Dragon's Might 2. Grape. Don't talk nonsense with him, let's just kill him. Lotus Seed said anxiously. Yes. Grape nodded and exchanged a look with Lotus Seed. Then, the 2 of them attacked the leader of the men in black together. Although the 2 of them were not as strong as the leader of the men in black, he was poisoned and could not display his true strength. Therefore, it was quite easy for the 2 of them to deal with him together. Whoosh. Buzz. Whoosh. The 2 of them continued to release divine power from their hands, which flew towards the leader of the black-robed men. Seeing this, the leader of the black-robed men wanted to dodge in a hurry. However, he felt that his body was not as agile as before. He hesitated for a moment, and his body was injured. Soon, his clothes were torn into strips of cloth, and everything that should and should not be exposed could be vaguely seen. Damn it. The leader of the men in black gritted his teeth. He was extremely ashamed and resentful, but his body was getting weaker and weaker, and he could not hold on any longer. Looking at the leader of the men in black who was on the verge of collapse, the grapes and the lotus seeds continued to exert their strength, releasing their divine power. Furthermore, the 2 of them deliberately kept on eating pills to replenish their divine power in front of the leader of the men in black. The leader was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Fuck. They were really bullying him. The leader of the men in black couldn't help but curse in his heart. The water and fire divine power flying towards him was too much for him to handle. Right now, he absolutely had no power. Take my fire god's cut. Fire. Grape shouted, and a huge fireball flew towards the man in black. Both the captain and the unconscious man on the ground were her targets. My water tornado is still the best. Lotus Seed was not to be outdone either. A waterfall-like water belt also flew straight towards the men in black. Seeing how serious the 2 of them were, Lung Ruoxue was speechless. She thought to herself, so what if one of you is planning to start a fire while the other is going to put out the fire? Or did they want to be in perfect harmony? However, no matter which one it was, these men in black probably wouldn't be able to withstand it. Bang! Bang! After 2 loud bangs, the men in black were set ablaze, and the waterfall that followed immediately extinguished the fire on their bodies. Seeing this, Grape was naturally unwilling to give up. She released a few more fire god slashes in succession, hitting Black Clothes's body. Then Lotus Seed did the same. Stinky Lotus. Are you going against me? Grape asked, a little annoyed. Of course not. I'm putting out a fire. The room is so small, what if we get involved? Even if you want to set a fire, you have to wait until we're out. Lotus Seed said very seriously. That makes sense. I was too excited. A good child who knows his mistakes and can change for the better. Hearing Lotus Seed's words, Grape immediately admitted his mistake. At this moment, the leader of the men in black, who was already covered in injuries and had experienced both fire and water, was so angry that he wanted to faint like the others. Was this considered being bullied by a dog? In Plentiful City, he could be considered as a person who could get whatever he wanted. When had he ever suffered such vexing anger? However, even if he wanted to faint, he couldn't. Furthermore, his body wasn't listening to him. He could only watch as Lung Ruoxue and the other 2 walked past him and swaggered out. He couldn't catch his breath and his eyes rolled back. Finally, he collapsed. Of course, he was definitely angry. He finally fainted as he wished. It really wasn't easy. Grape sighed. As he spoke, Lung Ruoxue and the other 2 had already walked out of the room. Standing in the courtyard, the 3 of them looked at each other. Grape then began to carry out her plan of setting the house on fire. This was not her home anyway, so even if it was all burned down, she would not feel any heartache. The Vulcan's blade in her hand was released continuously, and soon, the room they were staying in was set on fire. Lung Ruoxue smiled as she looked at the soaring flames. We can leave this place now. And Grape and Lotus Seed nodded, and the three of them walked out of the courtyard. As they walked, they did not see a single person. At this time, the guards in the courtyard had all disappeared. Suddenly, the sound of killing entered the ears of the three people. The three of them curiously followed the direction of the sound, and just happened to see the woman who wanted to cooperate with them. She was leading a group of women to fight with the men in black. Miss, should we help? Grape asked in a low voice. In fact, she was very afraid that she would be bitten back after helping. One must know that the scariest thing in this world was an ungrateful wolf. Go and help them. Lung Ruoxue nodded. Seeing that these women were all covered in wounds, it was clear that they had a strong will to live. In fact, if these women had given up on themselves, she would not have meddled in their business. However, it was obvious that these women wanted to live. And Grape and Lotus Seed were extremely excited. The young Miss Medicine was too effective, so when they were dealing with those men in black before, it didn't take much effort. But now it was different. These men in black were much more difficult to deal with than the previous ones. At the thought of this, the two of them could not wait any longer, and rushed into the battle. Their participation in the battle had helped to relieve the pressure on the women who were exhausted from the battle. Lung Ruoxue then threw them some pills that could replenish their divine power. The women swallowed them without thinking and instantly felt the divine power in their bodies being replenished. At that moment, the women's auras soared. Thank you, the woman said gratefully. Focus. Let's take care of these people. Lung Ruoxue reminded. All right. The ladies who had their spirits lifted were all rubbing their fists and wiping their palms as they looked for their opponents. Lung Ruoxue, on the other hand, was leisurely observing the battle. After all, her strength was the lowest among these ladies. Even if she were to slack off, no one would have any objections. Furthermore, she had just helped them. However, even though Lung Ruoxue wanted to watch the battle, someone did not allow her to do so. Perhaps they thought she was a pushover. At the same time, three men in black had her surrounded. What are you guys doing? Lung Ruoxue gently stroked Xiao Budian's soft fur as she asked indifferently. Of course I'm going to kill you. Can't you tell? One of the men in black shouted angrily. Oh, kill if you want to. Why are you so fierce? I'm not scared. Lung Ruoxue complained on purpose. Chapter 1485. The Fire Dragon's Might 3. Don't talk nonsense with her, kill her first. The other man in black said impatiently. There were so many of them, but they had not even killed a single woman. He couldn't help but feel depressed. I'm so scared, Lung Ruoxue said with a face full of fear. However, she could not help but laugh in her heart. Could strength really represent everything? Although the three men in black were all God-tier masters, they were overconfident if they wanted to kill her. She might not be as strong as the three of them, but who said that they had to fight with real weapons? Humph. It's too late to be afraid now. None of you will be able to live today. The black-clothed man who spoke first said. Since that's the case, I can't just let myself be slaughtered like that. All of you, come at me together. Lung Ruoxue said with a faint smile. Her words caused the hearts of all the women in the battle to tremble. A sense of shame welled up in their hearts. Lung Ruoxue was only a mid-stage deity, and yet she didn't even put these men in black in her eyes. There was naturally no need for them to be afraid. When they thought of this, their confidence exploded. A powerful aura burst out from their bodies, and their movements became even more ferocious. In an instant, the men in black who were fighting with them, they were all suspicious, but no one dared to let their guard down. As for Lung Ruoxue, she had never expected that a simple sentence of hers would have such a huge effect. However, she was not in the mood to think about such things. Her attention was completely focused on the three men in black in front of her. Hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, the three men in black could not help but laugh. Ha ha ha. A beauty. We won't show any mercy to a woman, so you're dead. I don't need you to be tender to me. Don't talk nonsense, just do it. Lung Ruoxua urged, her beautiful face still showing an impatient expression. Humph. You're rushing to your death. After one of the men in black finished speaking, he could not wait any longer and attacked Lung Ruoxua. Sister. I'll help you. Xiao Budian, who was in Lung Ruoxia's arms, saw this and immediately went up to meet him. His little claws were moving left and right, drawing a beautiful cold light in the air. In the blink of an eye, the black-clothed man's body was covered with claw marks, and blood was seeping out from the claw marks. How pitiful! You can't even defeat a small beast that hasn't even reached adulthood. Lung Ruoxua couldn't help but exclaim loudly. At this moment, the black-robed man who was entangled by Xiao Budian had no way to fight back other than to dodge. If his movements were too slow, he would be caught by Xiao Budian's sharp claws. Damn it! You shut up! The black-clothed man who was fighting with the little guy roared out in anger. If I can't win, I can't win. And you don't allow others to say it. You're really too stingy. Lung Ruoxua was very dissatisfied. The consequences were equally serious, and the other two men in black had become her punching bags. However, before she made her move, she waved her fair and tender little hand in the air, and a powder that was almost invisible to the naked eye was sprinkled directly on the two men in black. In an instant, the two men in black felt an extremely itchy sensation on their bodies, as if thousands of insects were gnawing at them. The painful and itchy feeling made them feel extremely uncomfortable. The itchiness on their bodies caused the two of them to reach out their hands to scratch the itchy spots. Lung Ruoxua took the opportunity to make her move. A huge fire dragon soared into the sky, its huge eyes staring fiercely at the two ugly men in black. Then, with lightning speed, it charged towards the two men aggressively. This fire dragon was condensed by Lung Ruoxua using her divine power. The flames on the fire dragon were her natal flames. Even the tiniest bit of it would turn it into ashes. Lung Ruoxia's motive for adding her natal flames into the fire dragon was naturally to kill it in one strike. After all, she did not have the upper hand in terms of strength. The fire dragon was extremely fast, and before the two black-clothed men could react, it had already wrapped them up tightly. They didn't even have the chance to cry out before they were directly reduced to a part of the air, disappearing from the world. Lung Ruoxua was stunned when she saw this. The power of his flames was so great. I just don't know if it can burn a reverent god, hee. She couldn't help but let her imagination run wild. As for the black-clothed man who was currently entangled by the little guy, after seeing his companion disappear just like that from the corner of his eye, his heart trembled. His footsteps became somewhat disorderly, and even the gaze he used to look at the little guy revealed a trace of fear. That dragon was really too powerful. How could it let people live? Moreover, after the dragon had eliminated the two men in black, not only did it not disappear, but it was even staring at him like a tiger watching its prey. How could this not make him scared? At this moment, he really wanted to run away. However, the little guy would not give him the chance to do so. Taking advantage of the time when he was still in the middle of his spell, he grabbed a few more streaks from his body. When he felt a little tired, he jumped back into Lung Ruoxia's arms and handed the black-robed man, who was covered in wounds, to the fire dragon that Lung Ruoxua had conjured. You, what are you doing? Don't mess around. Looking at the proud fire dragon, the man in black was so scared that he was incoherent. The expression on his face was like a wronged wife. He was wrong. He shouldn't have thought that this woman was the weakest and wanted to deal with her. This woman was clearly a pig to eat the tiger. Her strength was the highest among these women. Damn it. She had actually hidden her strength and caused him to misunderstand. Fortunately, Lung Ruoxua did not know the thoughts of this black-robed man. Otherwise, she would definitely cry out in grievance because she was only a mid-level deity. It was just that her flames were a little abnormal. As if it understood the man in black's words, the fire dragon in the air stared at the man in black for a long time with a conflicted expression. Finally, it slowly flew towards the man in black. At this time, the man in black was so scared that his legs were weak, and he couldn't run even if he wanted to. In an instant, the fire dragon pounced at the man in black again. After eliminating the three men in black, the fire dragon, who was unwilling to be left out, began to attack the other men in black. However, at this time, the men in black were fighting with the women, so it was not easy for it to make a move. Therefore, it just wandered around in the air. Once it encountered a man in black who was alone, it would be its. Chapter 1486. The Fire Dragon's Might 4. As the number of men in black inexplicably decreased, the women who were focused on fighting the men in black also felt that something was wrong. Moreover, the temperature around them seemed to have suddenly risen. At this time, someone realized that a fire dragon had appeared beside him. Seeing that it had attracted everyone's attention, the fire dragon let out a few long roars towards the sky in satisfaction. It then continued to shake its head and tail at Lung Ruoxue. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue could only helplessly say, "All of you move aside. Leave those people to my fire dragon." As the master of her own life flame, she was very clear about the fire dragon's thoughts. She also knew that the fire dragon she had mimicked had consciousness, who asked her flame to be different. When the women heard Lung Ruoxue's words, they were a little skeptical. However, they still tactfully made way for her. After they retreated to a safe place, the black-robed man with the bruises on his body was instantly exposed. When the fire dragon saw this, it was extremely excited. Sob. It seemed that the bad master had not let it out for a long time. Today, it had to do something big. As the saying goes, the natal flame would be nurtured by the owner. Although the consciousness of the flame was not complete, it had already taken shape and was connected to Lung Ruoxue's mind. Therefore, its actions could also be considered as Lung Ruoxue's subconscious thoughts. At the same time, the fire dragon suddenly expanded its body. It was now more than twice as big as before, and the flames on its body burned even more fiercely. In the next second, it covered all the dumbfounded men in black in its flames. In just a few seconds, the man in black disappeared without a trace, not even leaving a strand of hair behind. All the women, including Grape and Lotus Seed, widened their eyes in disbelief and were speechless for a long time. Half a moment. The crowd finally regained their senses. The lady walked to Lung Ruoxue's side and said with a fearful expression, "I didn't expect you to have such a powerful beastie." It seemed that the other party had indeed shown mercy to them. Otherwise, they would not be a match for this beast. Because the fire dragon that Lung Ruoxue had conjured had a physical body, and even its eyes were alive, they had mistaken it for a beastie. However, Lung Ruoxue had no intention of explaining it to them. She only smiled faintly and said, "It's my trump card. I won't use it easily because once I use it, it will sleep for a long time. So that's how it is." "That's right. In order to avoid any more trouble, let's quickly leave this place," the woman suggested. This time, they had escaped from death, so all the women wanted to leave as soon as possible. Do you have any plans for the future?" Lung Ruoxue asked with a smile. We haven't decided yet," the woman said, a little embarrassed. Before this, they had been thinking about how to escape. As for what would happen in the future, they really had not thought about it. Actually, what I want to say is that women don't necessarily have to rely on men to live. If you want, you can also make your own world. Lung Ruoxue half reminded and half encouraged him. "Can we?" All the women said in unison. Although some of them were obtained by Liao Yang through extraordinary means, over time, they had become accustomed to it. As for the other women, some of them were willing to follow Liao Yang, and some were sent here by their families. The one thing they had in common was that they had all accepted their fate. This was because unless the women in the divine realm were especially doted on by their families, they could only be reduced to the chess pieces of their families. This profound thought that had been ingrained in them for a long time had caused them to lose their sense of self. He didn't even think about his future. However, Lung Ruoxue's words had touched them greatly. They couldn't help but think about it seriously, but they didn't have much confidence. "Why can't I? As long as you want to, you can do it. Of course, if you want to continue with your previous life, that's your choice. But what I want to say is that a woman who depends on a man's life will never be truly respected by others." Lung Ruoxue said calmly, "Let's quickly leave this place." Lung Ruoxue spoke again as she looked at the confused expressions on the ladies' faces. She knew that even though her thoughts had shaken these ladies, it would still take time for them to accept it. Chapter 1487. Good Character, 1. N. The women nodded and walked towards the door together. However, they were all preoccupied with their own thoughts and did not notice that the fire dragon had disappeared. Not long after they walked out of the courtyard, a huge fire started burning. At this moment, Zui, who was not far away from the courtyard, saw the fire dragon and sighed in his heart. He could offend anyone but a woman. Look at how ruthless these women are, just let them go. Before he left, he had to set fire to the courtyard. He really didn't cherish his property. However, when he saw that Lung Ruoxue and the other two were safe and sound, he turned around and left. After Lung Ruoxue and the rest left the courtyard, they separated from the other ladies. In her words, it was too dangerous for everyone to walk together, and it would not be easy for them to leave the city, so it was better for them to split up. The other ladies heard her words and felt that it was very reasonable. However, they had received Lung Ruoxue's help before, and she had touched them greatly. Hence, they were all a little reluctant to part with her. Seeing their expressions, Lung Ruoxue felt helpless. However, he still had to split up with them. After the crowd dispersed, Lung Ruoxue and the other two did not leave Plentiful City immediately. Miss, aren't we leaving? Grape looked at Lung Ruoxue, his face full of curiosity. Go. However, not now. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. When will it be? Grape and Lotus Seed asked in confusion. We have to go to the city lord's mansion. Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly. Miss, we've just escaped from there. Are we going to be sheep in a tiger's den? Grape's face was full of question marks. She believed that the young lady would not want to go to the city lord's mansion for no reason. Moreover, she would not go there to see Liao Yang. So what exactly did the young lady want to do? She was really curious. Then you want to leave just like this? Liao Yang caused us to suffer quite a bit of shock, so we should at least collect some interest. Lung Ruoxue replied matter-of-factly. What Miss said makes sense. When Grape and Lotus Seed heard Lung Ruoxue's words, they immediately nodded in agreement. Little guy, it's all up to you now. Take us to the Liao family's treasure vault. Lung Ruoxue chuckled as she instructed. Hearing Lung Ruoxue's instructions, Grape and Lianzi could not help but feel a few black lines sliding down their foreheads. They thought to themselves, young Miss is too ruthless. She actually wants to go to the Liao family's treasure room for a tour. However, with Xiao Budian's presence, there's really no place young Miss can't go. Yes, yes. The little guy happily nodded his head. This was something he loved to do the most. Following a flash of white light, when Lung Ruoxue and the others opened their eyes again, they had already entered a secret chamber. Wah! Is this the Liao family's treasure room? Grape looked around excitedly. This secret room was not very big, but there were many things inside. There were all kinds of rare treasures. Although she came from the Yin family of the 8 great divine regions, she still couldn't help but drool when she saw the good things in this secret room. And the little guy proudly nodded his head. Little guy, you're really amazing. You actually found this place. Grape's face was full of admiration. At this moment, the little guy had simply become her idol. It's just average. The little guy was very modest. In fact, he wasn't the one who found this place. It was his sister who told him, so Grape's words made him a little embarrassed. Don't just stand there, we're going to take everything away from here, leaving nothing for them. Lung Ruoxue said calmly. Miss, I'll go over there. Grape pointed to the left side of the secret room. Miss, then I'll go to the left. Lotus Seed said. All right. Lung Ruoxue nodded. The 3 of them split up and worked together, each collecting the items from a position. The 3 of them did not even look at the things they saw, and kept them into their storage equipment. Not long after, the large secret chamber was empty. Lung Ruoxue and the rest looked at each other, and smiled when they saw the 3 of them. Then Lung Ruoxue ordered Xiao Budian to move them out of the city gate. At this moment, The city lord's mansion had also discovered that the courtyard was on fire. However, when Liao Hui and his men arrived, the entire courtyard had already been burned to ashes. Looking at the destroyed courtyard in front of him, Liao Hui's heart ached. One must know that he had spent a lot of money to build this courtyard. At this time, he had long forgotten about the woman living in the courtyard. All he thought about was his loss. However, at this moment, he didn't know that his treasure house had also been robbed. Otherwise, he would have vomited blood in anger. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue and the other two had already left Plentiful City with Xiao Budian's help. Looking at the city gates, Lung Ruoxue smiled at Grape and Lianzi and said, "Let's go." And Grape and Lotus Seed nodded. However, Grape still had a big question. Did they just leave like that? Wasn't Liao Yang still alive and well? "Miss, why didn't you get rid of Liao Yang? I thought you would be so angry that you would kill him." Grape shamelessly asked. "Grape, do you know what men care about the most besides power and status? Don't you think that his current state is better than being dead?" Lung Ruoxue asked with a smile. That's true." Grape nodded. It was indeed a very painful thing for a lecherous man to lose his ability in that area. So it's more painful to let him live than to die. And Liao Hui, we robbed him of his many years of savings. Don't you think that's more depressing than killing them? Lung Ruoxue asked with a smile. Actually, it wasn't that she didn't want to kill the father and son of the Liao family, but she was too weak now. On top of that, the father and son of the Liao family had the God Lord's estate as their backing. Therefore, she didn't want to get into a conflict with the God Lord's estate too soon. After all, one had to look at the owner before they beat a dog. Yes. Grape and Lotus Seed nodded at the same time. The three of them chatted as they walked, and soon, they were out of the sight of Plentiful City. Before they reached the meeting point with Ning Hai and the rest, Lung Ruoxue and the other two saw a tall figure walking towards them. "Ruoxue, you guys are finally out. I'm so worried. If you guys didn't come out, I would have to return to Plentiful City to save you," Ning Hai said impatiently before they even got close. "I'm sorry to have made Brother Ning worry." Lung Ruoxue's beautiful face was apologetic. "It doesn't matter. It's good that you're safe. Ruoxue, let's quickly get on our way to avoid any more trouble," Ning Hai urged. He was afraid that the people from the city lord's mansion would chase after Lung Ruoxue and the other two when they realized that they had disappeared. "Yes." Lung Ruoxue nodded. At this moment, a huge gray eagle flew over and pounced at Lung Ruoxue. However, Lung Ruoxue managed to dodge it. Chapter 1488. Good Character 2 Wu Shua. "It's only been a few days and you're already despising me," Hui Ao said with an aggrieved expression. There were even tears glistening in his eyes. "I'm not despising you. You're so big, if you pounce on me you'll be injured," Lung Ruoxue said speechlessly. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Even if you want to act coquettishly, you have to do it after the mimicry. Anyone would be scared if you pounced on them like this. Oh. When Hui Ao heard Lung Ruoxue's words, he quickly transformed into his mimicry appearance and pounced into Lung Ruoxue's arms. "Hihi, Shue, I miss you so much," Hui Ao said shyly as he rubbed his head against Lung Ruoxue's chest. Seeing his beloved pet like this, Ning Hai hid far away, with the words, "I don't know it" written on his face. "Shue, let's go." Ning Hai started to urge him again. "Let's go." Lung Ruoxue smiled helplessly. After regrouping with the crowd, Lung Ruoxue and the rest were prepared to set off towards the Ning residence. However, when they saw the others, Lung Ruoxue accidentally discovered Hong Wuan among them. There was a tall and handsome man standing beside her, guarding Hong Wuan like a guardian angel. "Ruoxue, it's a good thing you're fine." When Hong Wuan saw Lung Ruoxue, she was extremely excited. "Hong Wuan, didn't you guys leave? Why is he with Big Brother Ning and the others?" Lung Ruoxue asked curiously. "I was worried about you, so I didn't leave Plentiful City too far. I happened to meet Brother Ning and accidentally found out about your relationship with them, so we stayed here to wait for you," Hong Ling explained with a smile. "Thank you for saving me." Qin Yan, the man beside Hong Ling, also said, "The one who saved you wasn't me, you're welcome." Lung Ruoxue said indifferently, "I know, but if it wasn't for you, that person wouldn't have saved me." Qing Yun understood. The other party was willing to save him because of Lung Ruoxue. Hence, he owed Lung Ruoxue a favor, and he would definitely return this favor when he had the chance. Beastie was a person who knew how to repay kindness. "Alright, we're about to leave this place. Where are you guys planning to go?" Lung Ruoxue knew that Beastie was a stubborn person, so she could only change the topic. "We have nowhere to go. Can we go with you?" Hong Wan said, a little embarrassed. Actually, this was something she had discussed with Brother Qing. The two of them wanted to stay by Lung Ruoxue's side to see if there was a chance to repay her kindness. Otherwise, they would feel uneasy. However, they did not have any good reason to stay by her side, so they could only find the worst excuse, which was that they did not know if she would take them in. Thinking of this, she looked at Lung Ruoxue with a pitiful gaze, then turned to Ninghai and the others. The charm of a beautiful woman was indeed invincible. Before Lung Ruoxue and Ninghai could speak, someone impatiently said, "Captain, let them stay. They're pretty strong, and our team just so happens to be lacking people." After hearing his team members' words, Ninghai was a little embarrassed. In fact, he knew very well that they didn't want to join their team at all. They just wanted to find an opportunity to repay Ruoxue. However, looking at Ruoxue's appearance, she didn't seem to want to be their benefactor. If he took in these two people and made Ruoxue unhappy, that wouldn't be the result he wanted. So for a moment he really didn't dare to make this decision. At the thought of this, Ninghai's gaze turned towards Lung Ruoxue, using his eyes to ask for her opinion. Lung Ruoxue had no choice but to say, "Big brother Ning, since they have no home to return to, you should take them in. And you guys come with us." Ninghai nodded and said to Hong Wan and Qing Yun, but he couldn't help but think in his heart, "It's not that she wants to follow me, okay?" However, since this was Ruoxue's idea, he had to obey it. Who asked him to not help Ruoxue in Plentiful City, and he had always felt guilty. After the discussion, Hong Wan and Lung Ruoxue set off with Lung Ruoxue and the others. On the way, when they passed the first city, Ninghai was afraid that what happened in Plentiful City would happen again. He did not tell Hui Ao to stop at the city gate. Instead, he set up a tent outside the city, and planned to leave the city immediately after entering the city the next morning. This was because according to the regulations of the Divine Realm, when passing by other people's cities, they were not allowed to fly directly, otherwise, they would be severely punished. When Lung Ruoxue saw Ninghai's quivering, she could only helplessly put on her men's clothes again. This time, there wouldn't be any men who would have any ideas about her. Initially, Qingju wanted to use the universal bracelet to change Lung Ruoxue's gender. That way, no one would suspect Lung Ruoxue's gender. However, Lung Ruoxue was not willing to do so. After changing her gender, she could not immediately return to her original gender. All she wanted to do was to return to the godly mainland as soon as possible. Hence, she was not willing to let Qingju change her gender. But in this way, she would have to work harder. However, in order to reduce the trouble, it was worth the hard work. After half a month's-long journey, they were also getting closer and closer to the Ning family's divine realm. Ruoxue, after passing through Firefly City and a forest, we will be in the Ning family's divine territory. Once we reach the Ning family's divine territory, we will be truly safe. Ninghai pointed at the city in front of him, and said with a relaxed expression. It should be known that for the past half a month, he had been on tenterhooks almost every day, afraid that something would go wrong. Fortunately, he had arrived at Firefly City safely. Although this was not a city that belonged to the Ning family, it was close to the Ning family's divine realm. Therefore, the relationship between the city lord of Firefly City and the Ning family had always been close. It could be said that they were dependent on the Ning family's divine realm to survive. Firefly City? The name of this city is quite special. Lung Ruoxue looked at the 3 words above the city gate and chuckled. Ha! Ruoxue, you don't know there is a reason why this place is called Firefly City. Every summer, countless fireflies will gather here, and the scene is really spectacular. Moreover, even if there is no lighting equipment, the Firefly City is still brightly lit at night. Therefore, some people also call this the Nightless City. However, it only has such a grand occasion in summer. Ning Hai explained with a smile. Xiatian? Isn't that the case now? Lung Ruoxue asked suspiciously. According to what Big Brother Ning said, wouldn't they be able to see thousands of fireflies tonight? Yes. That's why we came at the wrong time, but luckily, we're only staying for one night. Ning Hai said gloomily. Hearing Ning Hai's words and seeing his depressed expression, Lung Ruoxue was in a dilemma. What did Big Brother Ning mean by this? Weren't you very happy when you talked about the Firefly Festival? Why did he become depressed again after such a short while? Could it be that men could change their faces like flipping through a book? A man's heart was truly like a needle at the bottom of the sea. Chapter 1489. Good Character 3. Ruoxue. The grand occasion was quite attractive, but it was not a good thing for the people who were staying here. Sigh. You'll know when you experience it for yourself tonight. Ning Hai sighed. After that, Ning Hai led the group into Firefly City. In Firefly City, there were not many people on the streets. Lung Ruoxue and the others walked on the streets, but not only did they not see many people, other than the inns, almost all the shops had closed their doors. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue was very puzzled. Big Brother Ning, is today a special day? Why are all the shops in the city closed? Lung Ruoxue asked curiously. Ruoxue, you'll know tonight. Ning Hai smiled but didn't answer. It was obvious that he wanted to maintain a sense of mystery. Ning Hai led the group to a familiar inn. Before they entered the room, Ning Hai told Lung Ruoxue that they could go to sleep. After hearing Ning Hai's words, Lung Ruoxue's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. Although it was close to evening, there was still at least 2 to 4 hours before the sky turned dark. Besides, they hadn't even had dinner yet. Wasn't it a little too early for them to sleep the first thing they did after entering the room? Miss, it's not wrong for us to listen to Big Brother Ning. Grape also said with a mysterious look. Grape, you're keeping me in suspense too? Lung Ruoxue said gloomily. She felt even more aggrieved in her heart. Sob. You guys are such bullies. Knowing that it was her first time in the divine realm, they had actually colluded to hide it from her. This was really too much. Miss, you'll know at night. Now go to sleep. Grape urged with a smile. Then sleep. However, the grapes. You're not allowed to call me young miss anymore. I'm young master now. Lung Ruoxue reminded helplessly. It seemed like they were planning to keep her in suspense until late at night. Why was she so pitiful? I know, miss. I will remember to call you young master in front of others. Grape promised. Yes. Lung Ruoxue nodded. After lying on the bed, Lung Ruoxue became more and more depressed as she thought about it. Unknowingly, she slowly entered dreamland. Late at night, Lung Ruoxue was awoken by the buzzing sound in her ears. She opened her eyes impatiently and realized that it was already morning. No, it wasn't daybreak. The sky outside was filled with countless fireflies. Through the window, he could see the fireflies. They were fist-sized round, and looked very cute. A pair of transparent wings kept flapping, and the light source at the end of the wings was shining with a dazzling white light, illuminating the dark night sky as if it was daytime. However, these fireflies were a little too loud. It was so noisy that she couldn't fall asleep at all. At the same time, Lung Ruoxue finally understood why Big Brother Ning and Grape wanted her to sleep. It was because of this. Miss, you're awake. At this moment, Grape walked into the inner room from the outside. Do the people here sleep during the day? Lung Ruoxue said. No wonder so many shops were closed when they entered the city in the afternoon. I heard so. This is my first time here too, miss. The scene outside is really spectacular. Let's go outside and enjoy it. Grape said eagerly, her beautiful face full of anticipation. Let's go. Lung Ruoxue washed up and walked out of the room with the grapes. At the door of the room, she met Ning Hai, who wanted to come downstairs to have dinner with her. The few of them went to the dining room. Sitting in the dining room, after ordering the dishes, Lung Ruoxia's gaze turned to the window. Seeing this, Ninghai smiled and asked, "How is it? Isn't it spectacular?" However, these bugs are a little noisy." Lung Ruoxia said. Without the existence of these insects, Firefly City would have already become the possession of some powerful force. Ninghai explained. Firefly City was owned by a small family. Although it was very close to the Ning family's divine territory, the Ning family did not plan to take it under their control, and these bugs were a big reason. Not only that, but many forces also lost interest in Firefly City because of the existence of these fireflies. Although these fireflies brought a spectacular scene, they also ate a lot. To keep these fireflies alive, they would lose a lot of money, and these fireflies could not bring too much benefit to the city. Except for attracting some outsiders to come and admire them every summer, there were not many benefits. However, these fireflies were like a guardian angel to the city lord and the people of Firefly City. Therefore, they very much welcomed these fireflies to come and live for free every year, and these fireflies also knew how to repay kindness. If anyone had any ideas about Firefly City, they would definitely be attacked by them. After many years of living together, Firefly City and those fireflies who treated this place as their home had long formed a wonderful symbiotic relationship, and they had always lived in peace. It seems that these fireflies are getting along well with the people in the city. Lung Ruoxia said. Yup. The people of Firefly City regard them as their guardian deities. It is said that a long time ago, these fireflies once saved the lives of their entire city, so they treat these insects very well. Especially when summer comes, the people in the city will consciously change their rest time for them. Moreover, these insects are also very intelligent, although their strength is not high. Ninghai said with a smile. They've already formed a symbiotic relationship. This is quite good. At least, I don't have to worry about being bullied by others. Lung Ruoxia chuckled. Ruoxia, do you know how much it costs to feed these bugs? There are so many of them. It's not easy to keep them alive. Ninghai was speechless. Since they've already formed a wonderful symbiotic relationship, it's easy to keep them alive. Lung Ruoxia replied calmly. There are so many of them. How are we going to feed them? Ninghai's face was full of question marks. If I were the city lord, I would let them find their own food. Lung Ruoxia said calmly. Looking for food? If they knew how to find their own food, they wouldn't have come here to live in the first place. Ninghai couldn't help but remind her. He felt that Lung Ruoxia's idea was clearly whimsical. The intelligence of these fireflies was not very high. How to communicate with them was a big problem. If these fireflies were really so obedient, this place would probably have changed owners long ago. Big Brother Ning, these fireflies have been here for many years, right? Have you ever thought that they only appear in the summer, so where do they go in the winter? Lung Ruoxia asked with a smile. They should be hibernating in winter. Ninghai thought for a while and said, even if you want to hibernate, there should be a place. Besides, we're not from here, so how can we be so sure that the city lord here has no way of communicating with these fireflies? Lung Ruoxia continued. Chapter 1490. Good character for. Alright. You've convinced me. Ninghai was helpless. What Lung Ruoxia said did make sense. He was not from Firefly City after all. Ha. Big Brother Ning. Let's eat. Let's go for a walk on the streets later. Lung Ruoxia couldn't help but laugh when she saw Ninghai's resigned expression. Ninghai nodded. After the meal, Ninghai brought Lung Ruoxia and the other two to the streets. At this moment, the pedestrians on the streets were like a sea of people, and the streets were bustling with life. Furthermore, every shop was open for business. Lung Ruoxia was amazed by their unique business model. It seemed like no matter where one was, one would be able to find a way to survive. On the street, it felt more real than observing the fireflies through the window in the room. Furthermore, some of the fireflies did not seem to be afraid of strangers. Two of them actually flew down from the sky and landed on Lung Ruoxia's shoulders. Lung Ruoxia lifted her beautiful eyes and looked at the two little things on her shoulders who were slightly shy. Her forehead was filled with black lines. She couldn't help but grumble. You two are just two little bugs. What are you so shy about? Oh, could it be that these two little fellows were female? She let her thoughts run wild. These two little guys were very beautiful. Their bodies were golden and translucent, looking like two exquisite crafts. They were very likable. Young master, not only do you attract beasts, but you also attract insects. Grape sighed. However, the moment her words left her mouth, it attracted the angry glare of the two little worms on Lung Ruoxia's shoulders. Seeing this, she could not help but laugh. Ha ha ha. They're still staring at me. Grape laughed wildly. Grape, we're on the streets, so be careful of your image. Lung Ruoxia couldn't help but remind her maidservant when she saw her maidservant laughing without any regard for her image. Miss, these two little things are quite interesting. But why didn't any insects land on me? Grape saw a firefly on Lotus Seed's shoulder, and his heart suddenly felt unbalanced. His character. Lotus Seed said deliberately, obviously trying to anger Grape, as if to verify her words. At this time, a firefly also fell from Ninghai's shoulder. Seeing this situation, Grape became even more depressed. Her mind began to run wild. Could it be that she was really a bad person? Ha ha ha. Lung Ruoxia and the others laughed happily when they saw Grape's troubled and depressed look. Miss, you guys ganged up to bully me. Grape's eyes were filled with tears as he said in an extremely aggrieved manner. Someone even colluded to hide it from me before. Lung Ruoxia kindly reminded Grape when she heard her words. Miss. Grape looked at Lung Ruoxia pitifully and called out pitifully. It's useless to act pitiful. Lung Ruoxia said without giving him any face. After she finished speaking, she even deliberately teased the two fireflies on her shoulders. Seeing Lung Ruoxia's expression, Grape was completely depressed. Ooh, the young miss was taking revenge. And obviously, the others had all wisely chosen to stand on the young miss' side. Why was she so pitiful? It was fine if those little bugs didn't like her, but they were also bullied. Miss, let's go over there and take a look. There are so many people there. I wonder what they are doing? At this time, Lotus Seed saw a lot of people gathered not far from them from the corner of his eye. He couldn't help but feel curious. You can let Big Brother Ning accompany you. I'm tired. I'll rest here and wait for you. Lung Ruoxia said after some thought. She had never liked crowded places. In addition, Firefly City was a little noisy at night, so she had enough of walking around after a while. Miss, if you're tired, let's go back to the inn. Upon hearing Lung Ruoxia's words, Lotus Seed hurriedly replied. It doesn't matter. You guys don't need to worry about me. Go and play on your own. Lung Ruoxia laughed. How can this be? Lotus Seed didn't agree. What's wrong? You won't listen to me? Lung Ruoxia deliberately put on a straight face and said in a slightly displeased tone. Miss, we'll go play by ourselves, but you just wait for us here and don't run around. Grape reminded him with a serious face. I won't run around, I'll just sit here and wait for you, okay? Lung Ruoxia could not help but laugh. These two maidservants were treating her like a child. Could she have lost it? Ruoxia, then I'll stay here to accompany you. Ninghai said worriedly. Ruoxia's strength was too low. He was not at ease to let her stay here alone, even though he did not think that there would be any danger in Firefly City. Big Brother Ning, don't worry about me. I'll have to trouble you to look after the grapes and lotus seeds for me. Lung Ruoxia chuckled. She had many ways to save her life, but she was worried about the grapes and the lotus seed. All right then. Ruoxia, wait for us here. Ninghai warned, as if he was afraid that he would not be able to see Lung Ruoxia when he returned. And Lung Ruoxia nodded towards the housekeeper and the housekeeper. Then she found an inconspicuous corner and sat down. After watching Ninghai and the other two leave, Lung Ruoxia was certain that they would not return so early, so she walked around the area casually. Then, she returned to the place where they had agreed to meet and waited for them. Not long after, Ninghai came back with grapes and lotus seeds. Along with him was a strange man and woman. They looked to be in their early 20s and were very beautiful. The man was a god-tier master. while the woman was only a god tier. From their expressions, they seemed to be arguing about something. Young master, let's go back to the inn. When he reached Lung Ruoxia's side, Grape pulled on her arm unhappily and left. Wait! Suddenly, they heard a loud shout. Lung Ruoxia was confused, while Ninghai and the other two were impatient. You're their master? At this moment, the woman walked in front of Lung Ruoxia and questioned her loudly. However, when she saw Lung Ruoxia's incomparably handsome face, she immediately turned into a love-struck girl. Her beautiful face was dyed with a touch of red, and her beautiful eyes flickered with countless carefulness. And Lung Ruoxia, who did not know what was going on, nodded her head. Countless question marks appeared in her mind. I'll buy these two maidservants, state your price. The woman said shyly. However, it was hard to change her nature. Miss, did you make a mistake? I didn't say I was going to sell my own maidservant. Lung Ruoxia was a little speechless. Seeing that both of them were dressed very luxuriously, their background should not be ordinary. However, even if they were born into a noble family, they couldn't possibly force them to buy, right? Big brother, just sell them to me. It's rare for my fiancé to take a fancy to these two girls and follow my fiancé. That's their good fortune that they've cultivated for several generations. The woman said pitifully as tears appeared in her eyes. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.